assets tracking private markets, and a lot more. Squawk Box, be right back.
Behind every click lies something irreplaceable. Your data, your thriving business, your promising future. Yet with each technological innovation come those determined to exploit it. That's why Cycurion's four-layered, first-of-its-kind protection system doesn't just respond to threats. It predicts and protects. Today, security isn't just a feature, it's fundamental to everything you value. At Cycurion, we're committed to evolving the next generation of AI-enabled defense. Cycurion, securing what matters most.
Hey! Want to win $500?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Listen up. The PXG Driver Challenge is back and bigger than ever. Bring in your current driver and we'll test it head-to-head against our Black Ops driver. If your driver delivers more distance and better dispersion than PXG's, you'll take home $500. Kaboom, baby! Book your free PXG Driver Challenge fitting now at PXG.com. PXG, you've never played like this before.
It is amazing. It used to have a collagen, used to have a probiotic, a green juice. I replaced it all with this Arma colostrum. If you don't know what colostrum is, it is amazing, but it is a bioactive whole food. It has all the essential nutrients you need for your skin, your gut, energy, focus, mood, performance, your hair, like immune system. It strengthens, supports all of that. I think the first thing I noticed was the energy and recovery that it had after workout, but if you want to try it, we'll try armor.com.
It's about political points.
People deserve better fiscal.
It's terrible. Politics seeps into everything.
What do you mean? Talk about climate change or the economy. Phil.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Luxury isn't about where you go. It's about how you feel getting there. With the thrill of 375 horsepower and the convenience of a 14.5 inch.
Order filled.
Order submitted.
It's about being able to see things bigger than ever. And turning a playlist into a concert. Welcome to the 2025 Genesis GV80 and GV70.
Order filled.
Order
Get the
filled.
GV80 for 2.99% APR for 60 months. Exclusively at your DFW Genesis retailers.
What's your flavor? Tell me what's your flavor?
Here's a taste of H-E-B Creamy Creations Mango Chamoy Sherbet. One of over 40 unique ice cream flavors created to satisfy Texans' cravings.
Tell me what's your flavor?
To the end zone for the touchdown. Oh, my goodness.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. The corporate woke wars have found their latest battleground in a freezer. Semaphore reporting that Unilever cutting off funding to Ben & Jerry's Foundation. This after a clash over transparency and ideological control. Joining us right now to get into it all, Liz Hoffman, Semaphore's business and finance editor. This is a fascinating story. Tell us what's really going on here.
So, Unilever bought Ben & Jerry's 25 years ago. And first they really liked their kind of quirky progressive politics. And then for a number of years, they kind of quietly tolerated it. And they've really lost patience with it. This is a company that has a real social mission, is not quiet about it, and is spending Unilever's money to enact it. Unilever gives millions of dollars a year to the Ben & Jerry's Charitable Foundation, which they send to exactly the kind of causes that you'd think, many of which have a very pro-Palestinian bent these days. And it's become a real headache for Unilever. And they are in the middle of spinning off this and their other ice cream businesses, which creates a corporate opportunity to figure out what's going on here. They're trying to audit the foundation. They're not getting a lot of cooperation. And they said, we're done funding this stuff. So that's where we are. There's a lawsuit simmering in the background where the foundation essentially says that they have been muzzled over the last year or two for speaking out on pro-Palestinian issues. And you end up with this really, really niche fight at this giant consumer goods company.
Is there any impact on sales as a result of what's happening here? Either people who are walking away from eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream or people rushing to Ben & Jerry's ice cream, given the stances that this company appears to have taken?
That's what's interesting to me. We haven't really seen it. I mean, there was a real sales impact about 4 or 5 years ago when Ben & Jerry's said, we want you to stop selling our ice cream in the occupied territories in the West Bank. And Unilever said, okay, we're selling the license. Like, we do not want to have this fight. So you saw it then. You actually haven't seen it now. This is a pretty niche fight between some pretty ideologically motivated trustees of the foundation and a bunch of British and Dutch executives who say, we did not sign up for this. We're just trying to sell ice cream. And by the way, we're trying to sell shares of this ice cream company to the public over the next couple of months. So it's become kind of a fight that's happening away from consumers, which is interesting to me.
Go 30,000 feet, though, up just on the whole DEI issue. What really is the status in this moment, you think, of companies rolling back these policies? There were a lot of announcements. Do you think that those were real? Was that just language? What's been the biggest impact, if you will?
I think it's mostly language. Certainly some real impacts on some of the stricter sort of HR policies that were adopted post 2020. You're seeing those quotas, which frankly were always kind of illegal, go away. The softer targets are still there. On the environmental stuff, it's kind of being rolled forward on a 5-year clock. I think companies are very afraid of being sued, frankly, for walking back things they said publicly, for almost as afraid as they are of kind of ending up in the public sphere for some of them. So I think most companies are trying to keep their head down. Unilever, unfortunately, cannot, because it has this very, very loud subsidiary.
Meantime, I think when you come on, we almost can't get away from, at some point, mentioning Elon Musk. The Musk-Trump fight is back on. It had been off. We thought there was a ceasefire between them. I don't think you can use the phrase ceasefire. That's wrong. It's just not a truce. But they're back on. What do you think it means to Tesla?
I think it's really bad for Tesla. We published some data yesterday, a consumer survey of 8,000 people. And, Musk had lost Democrats, some time ago, certainly on the way in. But there was a sense that he might be able to actually bring over some Republicans, kind of buying Teslas out of solidarity. And importantly for the EV industry, grow that tent, grow the politics of people who might be interested in an electric vehicle. That has not happened. The data that we published from an electric vehicle intelligence report said that Republicans were 11 percentage points less likely to buy a Tesla than they were just a couple of months ago. So that coalition has not expanded. This is bad for Tesla. I mean, the thing about Tesla is, for a while, it sort of had a monopoly on the product. It built these really beautiful, really great category-defining cars. It turns out it's not really rocket science. There are certainly things that Tesla is doing better, and the self-driving stuff is interesting. The robotaxi stuff is interesting. But building a good electric car is something that plenty of car companies have figured out how to do, which means that they're really reliant on the brand. And they kind of always have been, to a degree. Elon Musk kind of single-handedly kept Tesla afloat by bringing in investors, by bringing in talent. It was sort of a force of personality at that company. And now he's become, frankly, toxic to people on both sides of the aisle. I think they've got real problems.
Order filled. Order
You're already
submitted.
seeing it. There have been some
Order
executive
filled.
departures.
Order submitted.
Elon is kind of trying to run sales to take that over, particularly in Europe, where they've really bottomed out. I think they have real problems.
I wonder, Liz, if this sort of marks the pendulum swinging back. For some time we saw companies get out there, taking stands, selling products that cater to a specific group of people in the country. They suffered backlashes, that lasted much longer than anticipated. Target is one. Budweiser is another. We're seeing what's gone on with Tesla in terms of the turn in sentiment on Tesla, because the risk of taking a stand in any direction is that you offend the rest of the people who don't like that stand. And maybe this is, there, I think, could be an argument made that from a shareholder perspective solely, that this is a good thing, that companies are just thinking about what is best for shareholder value at this point, instead of trying to take stands which could risk alienating half of their customer base.
I completely agree. And I think this is a little bit of a function of kind of the late 2010s, where, not to say that being a CEO wasn't that hard, but things were going pretty well. This was a pretty benign macro environment. Earnings were growing. It wasn't the day-to-day job of running a company was just frankly easier. And it kind of created this sort of leisure time among the executive class. And it coincided with these big social movements. Me Too, the murder of George Floyd. And there was this sense that people were looking to them. Their employees and their customers and their shareholders were demanding that they take a stand. And they said, okay, like I feel like I have the rope to do that. A couple of things changed. Obviously, the politics just changed incredibly quickly. But so did the job of being a CEO. It frankly just got harder. And they're putting out a lot of fires in their business. And they say, God, I never really wanted to do this in the first place. I got kind of pressured into it. And it sort of sleeves off my vest to just keep my head down. The problem is that is hard to do because these companies are, largely big, complicated, global. The stuff really still matters in large parts of the world to investors. In particular. And so I think most CEOs are just kind of waking up and opening Twitter and saying kind of there, but for the grace of God, go all of us. I do think they are just badly trying to get out of the business of having opinions on stuff.
Okay. Liz Hoffman, Semaphore, great to see you. Appreciate it. We should also mention for just a moment that we reached out to Ben & Jerry's for comment on that Semaphore story, and they did not get back to us.
Coming up, Fed Chair Jay Powell said yesterday that the central bank would have eased monetary policy by now if not for President Trump's tariff plan. We'll talk to former World Bank President David Malpass. That's next.
Order canceled.
He sure knows these parts well.
Folks say the plane's whispering.
Order filled.
Outlaws in 500 feet. Rerouting.
Making it up! Innovation changes everything.
Man, he's good.
With one investment, you can access the NASDAQ 100 innovators who are rethinking the world. Before investing, carefully read and consider fund investment objectives, risks, charges, expenses, and more in prospectus at invest.
It's time. Yes, the time has come for a fresh approach to dog food. Every day, more dog people are deciding it's time to quit the kibble and feed their dogs fresh food from the farmer's dog. Made by vets and delivered right to your door, precisely portioned for your dog's needs. It's an idea whose time has come.
The time has come. Investing. You buy low, sell high, jump on that trend, ride the wave. Stop. That's not how investing works. You're not a child playing a game. This is grown-up business. The real thing. You know wealth isn't won in a bet. Luck is not a strategy, and success demands discipline. You're serious about investing, right?
TimberTech decking looks like real wood.
But there's no hassle of maintaining it.
I just take the leaf blower and blow the leaves off of it. It's fantastic.
We have a sectional out there, and we'll sit out there with a glass of wine. We feel like we're in heaven.
We need samples from living dinosaurs.
You want to take samples while they're alive?
Jurassic World, rated PG-13.
Fed Chair Jay Powell said yesterday that President Trump's tariffs had lifted inflation forecasts and were keeping rates on hold. Joining us now for more on the Fed and the U.S. economy, David Malpass, former World Bank president and now distinguished fellow of international finance and inaugural fellow of global business and infrastructure at Purdue's Business School. David, great to have you with us.
Hi, Melissa. Good to be on.
Where do you think rates would be had it not been for the tariffs? Would we be lower, and do you agree that the Fed should stand pat? And I'm wondering how long you give it to see what the impact of tariffs will be.
I was surprised to see the chairman say that. He was in Europe, and you have to understand the context in Europe. It's all these central bankers sitting around talking and basically anti-Trump. And so that made sense there, but it diverts attention away from the real problem. The Fed has the rates too high, and the question is, when are they going to cut and find an exit strategy from what they're doing? The Fed's have created all these problems, these cycles of inflation and deflation, and I think they have to. There has to be a full remaking of their models. Trump's trying to do that, but it's going to take time. And look at Europe; they're just going to stay stuck in the mud.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm interested in your notion that the context is important in terms of it being a very anti-Trump crowd, because it's almost like the Fed chair was saying, "It's your fault, President Trump. You are the one keeping rates high at this point."
That's the way they want to put it, but the reality is, how do you find models that actually welcome growth? Look, Europe is running a very slow growth, practically a recession all the time. The central bank says that's good because that way you don't overheat. Well, if you run a whole world, the U.S. economy on the grounds that you don't want to overheat, that's really bad for the forgotten man. Trump ran on the idea that there'd be higher medium wages and especially manufacturing jobs. And you can't do that with the rates where they are. They're too high for that because commercial and the actual working capital loans that are needed for small business and for manufacturing aren't there. The banks aren't doing it because all they want to do is lend to the government.
Hey, David, I have a question for you about this bill, and I want to read you. This is an op-ed just this morning from Robert Rubin, Larry Summers. It's titled, "We both served as Treasury Secretary. We know this bill is dangerous." They go on effectively to say, well, government can and should be more efficient. We cannot achieve the sound fiscal trajectory required for longer-term prosperity without significant tax increases. Rather than a legislative package that delivers trillions in tax cuts to the top, we should go back to the drawing board and find ways to raise trillions instead. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's wrong. It's not a tax increase. You know, it would be a tax increase if they didn't do the bill. And so this gets tangled up in the scoring. We saw it over the last week where they are using the CBO models, the Joint Tax Committee models, and the parliamentarian that were all put in by Biden. And so the reality is you need to change, you need to extend the current tax rates. Otherwise, you'd have a tax increase. And so the growth impact of that would be horrible. So I don't agree with Secretary Rubin or Summers. They served in the 1990s and had deflation. You know, it was a singular period where the Fed models were not working at that time. So we have to break out of it both from the scoring models that are on fiscal side, but it's the same limits to growth models that are on the Fed side. I think there's a chance right now to remake those models and say that we don't want to concentrate wealth in the rich. We want to see jobs in the middle class, in people that are doing manufacturing. Trump signaled that with the no tax on tips. And I think the American public just looks at that and says, good, that's the right way to go.
I think most would agree that the extension of the tax cuts very important in terms of stability and investment, and growth, et cetera, David. But is a price for all of this, I mean, the price is steep. It's an additional $3.3 trillion in debt. And I'm wondering how you think about the importance of the deficit right now, or if that's something that we just, as long as we can keep selling treasuries, this is all fine. As long as we are the default reserve currency, reserve asset, you know, there is no alternative to U.S. treasuries, we are fine increasing the deficit.
The debt is a big problem. The U.S. government is sucking money from all over the world. But that $3 trillion number that you're doing, and the New York Times does it all the time, is not the increase in what the debt would be. It's this static model that if we didn't extend the tax cuts and if there was no impact on growth, then we'd be better off. Well, that's a hypothetical world that's not reality. So we've got to stick with the idea that this U.S. economy can grow much faster than it is. The Fed's in the way because they're using models that are inherently limits to growth, and this is the opportunity to break out of it. So I think we have to recognize the bill itself will get this problem moving forward. I think financial markets will react, already have been, reacting positively to the bill because it gives stability in the tax code. It's been odd that the Fed has not, throughout this last 3 years where there were these huge blowouts in government spending, the Fed was silent. And we have to say that all of Washington, D.C. is complicit in this of making the government bigger and bigger. So that should come to a stop right now.
All right, David, great conversation. Thank you. David Malpass.
It is almost 8 a.m. right here on the East Coast, just about. I think we got about 40 seconds before we hit it. You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC on this Wednesday morning. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Melissa Lee. Joe and Becky are off today. So much going on, especially in Washington right now. Top story, President Trump's tax and spending bill back in the hands of the House with a lot of pressure to get it to Trump's desk by Friday to meet that timeline. The House can't make any changes, though, to the Senate version at all because, well, most members of the Senate have already left town, and some members of the House are already raising objections. So we're going to see what happens here. On the tariff front, the president suggesting the U.S. could reach a trade deal with India ahead of the July 9th deadline, which he said he's not thinking of extending. The president expressing doubt about reaching a deal with Japan, though, by then, threatening to hit the country with tariffs of up to 35%. So one of our great allies could get hit with a 35% tariff. And we're watching bank stocks today, many hiking dividends and buybacks after passing the Fed stress test. Goldman Sachs raising its dividend from $3 to $4 a share. Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan also raising dividends while authorizing new stock buybacks. Bank of America, Citi, Wells Fargo also boosting shareholder rewards. So, and we had a guest on who's got a very bullish outlook on the banks.
Because of AI.
Because of AI.
Because of this.
Right.
President Trump says Israel has agreed to conditions to finalize a 60-day ceasefire deal in the war with Hamas, and the U.S. will use that time to try to help end the conflict. In a post on Truth Social, the president said, "I hope for the good of the Middle East that Hamas takes this deal because it will not get better. It will only get worse." Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is scheduled to visit the White House next Monday. The U.S. equity futures at this hour turned negative here on the S&P 500, but just slightly. Dow still looking to add by about 54 points at the open. NASDAQ looking to be lower by 38 points. Let's get to the New York Stock Exchange. Mike Santoli has a look at the trading day ahead, and this follows a very interesting first trading day of the second half. Yesterday, we saw a decisive rotation, Mike, into some of the lower multiple areas of the market.
Very dramatic, Melissa, absolutely. So on the surface level, the S&P 500 did almost nothing, but there was almost the maximum amount of pushing and shoving below the surface to get there. I do want to point out one thing, the repair process from that springtime mini crash has continued to the point where we have a so-called golden cross. That's when the 50-day moving average of the S&P 500 crosses above the 200-day. The forward-looking implications of that in the next month or so are pretty much negligible. It's kind of like could go either way. Sometimes you back up a little bit, but over 6 months, it tends to be a more positive indication that the uptrend is back in place. Now, you mentioned those rotations. Take a look at one way of viewing this. This is the S&P Momentum Factor ETF, SPMO, and that's S&P Value. So this is just a 5-day chart, but what you see is, as you mentioned, that one-day immediate turnabout. Now, on a year-to-date basis, momentum is beating value by 13 percentage points. So this is really just about mean reversion, the idea that the momentum factor perhaps got a little bit too stretched relative to the rest of the market. There's been this mechanical rotation in the other direction. Whether it continues, we've seen this before. It's actually had one in February. Sometimes it can be a source of instability and sort of erratic action because you don't have the protection and sponsorship of those mega cap growth stocks for the index. But for now, it seems like it's really just more healthy. Banks were up yesterday, as you guys were mentioning. That's a good piece of this. Healthcare is up 2% week to date, and the S&P is up only 0.5%. Now, take a look at this. This is the S&P Industrial ETF, and that's the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You see for the most of this period, mostly in line, but now you've seen the S&P Industrials just rocket ahead. Couple things here. The non-industrial parts of the Dow have been holding it back. That would include healthcare like United Health and Amgen. That would include Apple, which has started to bounce here and perhaps had a role in that break in the momentum factor. And then XLI also includes things like Uber and a lot of those AI-levered power plays in industrials that seem to be rocketing it higher. So maybe we're in for some convergence here as well, guys.
Yep. Mike, thank you. Mike Santoli. Tesla expects to report second quarter deliveries in the next 90 minutes or so. Yesterday, the EV maker's market cap falling below the $1 trillion mark for the first time since June. And it's currently the only Mag 7 name trading below that level. Joining us now with more is Colin Rush, Oppenheimer Senior Research Analyst. Colin, great to have you with us. Sell-side estimates is 385. Where do you fall on this, given we have some indications from Europe and China already?
Yeah, we're a little bit closer to 365 for the actual number. I think buy side is more in line with us in the 360 to 365 for deliveries. The China number that came out this morning, is an improvement from where they're at, but it's certainly not enough to get the company back to the kind of 450,000 units a quarter that they need to be at to really hit the street numbers for the balance of the year.
I'm curious, Colin, as to what investors are saying to you. And how you read their sentiment, given the tussles between Elon Musk and President Trump. I mean, you could make the argument that on the way up, when things were cozy between Musk and Trump, and the stock gained, from November to the end of the year or so early this year, that the stock should give back that and then some, because the position Tesla in right now is actually not even neutral; it's negative compared to where it started even prior to the election.
Yeah, I mean, I think what folks are looking at is really around execution on the technology side. We saw the launch of the robotaxi service in Texas. I think it's been kind of a net neutral to push slightly, a little bit up for some folks, a little bit negative for some folks. I think it was expected to be modest, and really the ability to improve performance from here is what everyone's watching. So we've seen some improvement around city driving on the technology. And I think what we're going to want to see is, just more and more trust being built with the consumers in the Austin area and increased usage on that technology. And then there's all the optionality around the humanoid robots, which, it's really unclear how quickly that will legitimately come to market and become a revenue driver for the company. And I think there's also some real questions around real application for those robots when you actually get into industrial processes. I think so for us, what we're getting is a lot of questions around uncertainty. There's a certain amount of, I think, trust in Elon, and that when he's backed into a corner, he actually tends to do pretty well. And we'll see how he works his way out of the situation, which looks pretty difficult right now.
Yeah, and to your point about execution, Elon Musk is now going to head Europe, right, after that person stepped aside. Tom Zhu, formerly VP in China, is now heading global operations. Does this increase your optimism that they will be able to execute?
One of the concerns that we had, and we started writing about it earlier this year, was around brain drain for the organization. Part of what we've seen historically, having covered the company for almost 15 years now, is that, the ideology of, a better future and a zero emissions future had really been driving a lot of the employees. As we saw Elon's political activity, get a little misaligned with some of that vision, I think there's some real concern around Elon's politics and what the company's mission really ultimately is. And so as we see some of these management changes, I think the company was probably due for a little bit of a turnover on some of those roles already. But, who actually fills the roles and how well they fill them and how efficient they actually execute around some of the adjustments that they need to make as an organization are really going to be telling. My feel is that this is going to be a little bit of a tough transition for the balance of the year, and that 2026 may be a little bit better, but I think this year is going to be choppy in terms of execution and results for at least the next couple of quarters.
I mean, do you want the CEO to be heading Europe? I mean, that just seems too granular for a CEO of an EV company that's has a very sort of uncertain future.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You don't want the CEO running sales for an organization of this size. You want him laying out the vision, but Elon's got a history of stepping in where needed and then bringing someone in to actually fill the role. So I think he's probably trying to get his head wrapped around what exactly the issues are and how they want to approach it. and having that direct experience is helpful. But the fact that he's stepping in suggests that they don't have a great solution for how they're going to address the European demand. And that, I think, is part of our concern here for the next couple of quarters as they work to figure that out and build a strategy around addressing that issue. Having Elon there, I think, is the right move short term, but over the long term, you certainly don't want him running sales in Europe.
All right, Colin, great to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colin Rush.
Okay, meantime, Netflix holding talks with Spotify about partnering on a number of projects related to music award shows and live concert series. That's according to a Wall Street Journal report that said that they're also considering doing some big celebrity interviews and short turnaround documentaries. Netflix also rebooting the talent contest Star Search and is working on another music competition show as well. So, it's so interesting, and we'll see if they ever get there. I was going to say, do they ever really go to the news? I remember many years ago talking to Reed Hastings about news. Would you ever have news on Netflix? And he said, nope. And that was, by the way, at a time, you remember they had a comedian on, there's a lot of comedy on Netflix. And I think one of the comedians had said something about MBS. This was after the Khashoggi stuff.
Oh, right.
And they were shut down or had to pull the video from the service to stay on in Saudi. And he said, we're not in the news business. We don't want to be in these sort of controversial places. It's interesting. Once you start getting into talk shows and other things, by the way, for a long time they said they wouldn't be in sports.
Right, but all these things are unscripted, basically, and news is scripted.
Well, news is not. You think this is scripted?
Well,
There's nothing scripted about this.
There's nothing scripted about it. I mean, we wouldn't say half the things no, just kidding. But it's a much costlier business, the news gathering business of sending crew, and maybe things will change with different technological developments, but I think that it's a much more difficult road, as we know.
Yeah.
All right. And Jeff Bezos just unloaded more than 3 million shares of Amazon, valued at nearly $737 million. The move was part of a prearranged plan allowing Bezos to sell up to 25 million Amazon shares through next May. And this, of course, coincides with his nuptials to Lauren Sanchez.
Coming up, ADP private payrolls just moments away ahead of tomorrow's government jobs data. We're going to bring you the numbers and instant market reaction next. Then a first on CNBC interview with SEC Chairman Paul Atkins. Squawk Box coming right back.
Life is always changing, and our Lovesac couch adapts to it all. Gathering around for game day one moment, reconfiguring for entertaining the
Order
next.
canceled.
And tomorrow, a new
Order
look
submitted.
entirely.
Order
because
submitted.
Lovesac adapts to life, our life.
At AG1, our customers deserve the best, and the best just got much better. AG1 Next Gen has launched with upgraded B vitamins and probiotic blends backed by gold standard clinical trials. It's time for the next generation of AG1.
Order
What if
filled.
you could invest in a
Order
future
filled.
where
Order
skin
filled.
cancer treatment is
Order
non-invasive
filled.
and relatively painless? Medicus Pharma's groundbreaking solution delivers chemotherapy directly to the tumor site, offering a mostly painless alternative to invasive surgeries. With the skin cancer treatment market expected to exceed $20 billion by 2030, Medicus is poised to meet the demand for cost-effective, non-surgical options. Now advancing Phase 2 studies. Medicus Pharma, leading the charge in skin cancer innovation.
How did you all live like this?
Blow on it. Wait. Up there. Come on.
Introducing CNBC Plus, the new streaming platform from the #1 source in business news. Watch live or on demand. Access any market, anytime, anywhere. Start streaming. Go to cnbc.com/plus.
Finding the things you and your family need to be well is kind of a big deal. Finding ways to save on those things is an extra big deal. Check out extra big deals at CVS. Extra Care members get extra big savings on more of what matters most every 2 weeks. It doesn't get extra bigger than that. Shop tons of extra big deals at CVS today. and come back for more every 2 weeks.
Today, let's paint with Behr, America's most trusted paint brand.
Wait, we don't have Behr.
Do we need that?
Well, this year's a paint and primer.
It just says ain't.
You bought ain't.
Well, with Behr, you can paint a whole room for under $100. How much did you spend?
Like a lot more.
Oh.
I thought you said you researched this.
Aren't all paints the same?
No, they're not. Don't overpay for your next project. Get Behr quality at an everyday low price. Only at the Home Depot.
Just about a minute away from ADP data that is set to be released at 8:15 on the nose. Let's check on the markets ahead of these numbers. We've got the S&P 500 looking to add about 4 points right at the open. We've declined over the course of the morning, but still looking for a gain. The Dow looking to add 75 points, and the NASDAQ paring its losses here, looking to open lower by about 10. Got to check Treasuries ahead of that number. We are seeing some stability in the 10-year yield, 4.296. That's where it's been pretty much the entire morning. And we've got the 2-year yield at 3.795%. Of course, we'll be watching these very closely for the reaction to the ADP report, which, of course, is the precursor to tomorrow's all-important jobs report, which will be another key data point for the Fed in making its decision. Quick check on oil here. We do have WTI Brent up by more than 1%, 1.2% to be exact, and Brent here at 1.2%. And taking a look at the dollar, we just mentioned the worst half of the year since 1973, and the dollar index is a little bit higher today. We've got ADP crossing the wires. Let's get to him.
Minus 33,000. ADP saying that non-farm payrolls declined by 33,000. That's substantially below, for the second month in a row, the estimate of 100,000. It is the only decline since March of 2023. Goods sector not doing too badly, up 32,000. The losses appear to come from the services sector. We'll show you details in a second, of minus 66,000. And there's the non-farm payroll estimate, which includes government and the private sector, for tomorrow, Thursday, remember, folks, and that's 110,000. It's the second weak month in a row for ADP after downwardly revised 29,000 for May. But it's been running, by the way, substantially weaker than the BLS private sector numbers. We'll give you that in just a second. But first, let's look at which sectors were affected. Small business down 47,000. There's been a lot of speculation as to whether or not the tariffs would be hurting or hitting small business, down 47,000. Medium-sized business down 15,000, but large businesses doing okay, up positive 30,000. The losses were in this professional business services sector, minus 56,000, but also one of the stalwarts of the job market, education and health services, down 52,000. Financial activities down 14, but manufacturing up 15, and leisure and hospitality still doing well, up 32,000. As for wages, the 4.4%, this is, by the way, called for millions of paychecks out there, so it's actually better than the government data. It is up 4.4% for people staying in their jobs. That's down a tick, and 6.8% for job changers. That's down 0.2 from the last month. Note that the average absolute difference, without care to sign, between ADP and the BLS private sector is now up to 77,000 per month. So it's not exactly spot on, and there's some scope for the ADP to be in line with the lower estimates on the street. Guys, I've seen other data that suggests the payrolls will be soft. Some of the high-frequency data we follow from Homebase, Goldman noting the big data. Also, maybe worth mentioning, in the ISM manufacturing report from yesterday, they said that mentions of job firings outnumbered mentions of hirings by 3 to 1. So I think the market has a, what's the right word, ambivalent relationship with ADP, right, because it's just not on. But as for perhaps spotting a trend or underlining the concerned softness, I think it probably does a decent job of that. Over the course of a 12-month period, the two are off by about 200,000. So over time, they kind of come together. That's only 14,000 a month. As for the Fed, this will increase pressure on the Federal Reserve to cut rates, but it won't change anything about the concern they have over potential inflation. So it really just kind of deepens the stagflationary concern that we've heard from Fed officials.
Yeah.
Meantime, the one and only Rick Santelli joins us from the CME for his reaction to those numbers. Rick, you've been looking at them, listening to Mr. Leisman. What's on your mind?
Well, I mean, definitely it's the worst job creation from ADP since March of 23. That's a pretty good stretch of time. We all know that the labor market, at least purported by all the experts, economists, and Fed personnel, is just kind of a ticking time bomb of slowness. It's going to definitely slow down. It's just a matter of when and what the rate of change is going to be. I don't know that I agree with that, but I do agree that the glide path is going to be headed down, but I think it's going to be a long glide path. And the relationship between ADP and the Labor Department's statistics that we'll be seeing tomorrow, as Steve adequately pointed out, there's a wide spread there. When I look at what happened with JOLTS yesterday, when I consider most of the press and headlines over tariffs and the current administration's policies, it doesn't shock me that there may be more uses of the word firing than hiring. But maybe it's the contrarian end of this that we should pay more attention to. Maybe we should learn a lesson about what the equity markets did, about the kind of counter-trend rally we had that briefly pushed yields down, although I think that much of that may be in the rearview mirror. Ultimately, I think it's easy. Yes, I think the best days of the labor market are behind us, but I do think that there could be a resurgence down the road for a variety of reasons after we hit maybe a small speed bump, and I think that's the real issue here. Are we going to get a genuine slowdown or a small hiccup? I'm in the latter camp.
Can we just go for one? Can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
What do you think this is a function of? Meaning why? We're talking about AI. We're talking about tariffs. So talking about what?
Eventually, standing in place creates a drain on the job growth. The reason is because people leave the job market if you don't hire more people. So what we've heard is not so, and what we've seen, by the way, in the data is not so much firing. It's a lack of hiring. Over time, that creates saps the strength of the labor market if you're not replacing those people who leave, so the total employment level would fall. I think the uncertainty may be a major role here. And I also think that we've heard a lot of stories about small businesses, the ones who are importing stuff, the ones who take the imported stuff and make other stuff out of it, small manufacturers, they have been potentially hurt by this. Before any of the potential positives that are hoped for by the administration, the bringing back or the reshoring, before that has any effect. I think the key here, again, is this stability, which would people say, okay, I know what the tariffs are going to be. I know what the taxing is going to be. That would say, okay, I get the situation. Now I can right-size my job, my employment, which may be higher, maybe lower, maybe the same. I would just point out, though, that it was the weakness in the job market. People debate the 50 basis point cut before the election. It was the weakness in the job market that was cited repeatedly by the Fed as to why they cut 50. They did so in a very different inflation environment than the one we have right now. And there are the probabilities now. I guess they're a little bit higher for October, a little bit higher for December.
Why was it a really different inflation environment?
Because you had declining inflation back then.
Come on. You had stagnant inflation back then, exactly like we have now. The sticky last mile. Really nothing has changed except for the way the Fed talks about it. It really hasn't changed much, Steve. If you look at the core numbers on PC, the core numbers on a lot of the data points, they're kind of stuck between 2.5 and 3.1%. Really nothing has changed on that front. There has been some uncertainty, but whether you look at things in the past like long-term capital, the credit crisis, uncertainty, exogenous issues always creep up, and the Fed seems to be able to determine policy before they happen. I'm not sure why tariffs are so damn different.
Rick, just real quick, you have across the board at least 10% increase in imports, right? And that will mathematically
10% what? Wait, I didn't pick that up. 10% what?
An at least across the board 10% tariff likely to be put on imports. So that's going to have some mathematical effect.
Right. And you're making that the center of your worry bead universe, although it's what? Imports 11% of the economy. Once again, I will stress, we are overplaying the uncertainty Trump tariff card. We are, and Trump's overplaying that he's not more hyperbole than fact on how rigid this is going to be.
What is it?
And both of these are going to meet. What is what? I think, you know, we just made new all-time highs in stocks. I don't know. I think things are pretty darn good.
Rick, just I have to tell you, you're wrong. During the time the Fed was cutting interest rates back in September,
I'm not wrong, Steve.
Inflation
you
was
might
falling.
disagree with me, but you can't
no,
determine
it's a
whether I'm
factual
right
thing,
or wrong.
Rick. It's a factual thing. Inflation was falling at that period of time.
Inflation hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. What changed is how you and others talk about it.
That's actually more for your argument, by the way.
It's down a lot from years ago. It's down a lot from years ago.
Order filled.
Like a good fight.
Order filled.
We gotta go.
Order submitted.
By the way,
Order filled.
U.S. markets, they are closed on Friday, of course, for the 4th of July holiday, the June jobs report. That's going to be released at 8:30 a.m. time tomorrow. So we'll give you the numbers and the market reaction. We'll see whether ADP matches whatever.
Order filled. Order submitted.
You did it. You took an idea on a napkin, built a successful business, and made it look easy. But at U.S. Bank, we remember what went into getting here. The hard work, self-doubt, tough decisions. From
Order
all
canceled.
those extra hours to finally enjoying the rewards. Our wealth management team is always here to work with you and every generation to come, because there's nothing as powerful as the power of us.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made these $15 bills. You know, it's green, Mint saves you money, maybe my face is on it, maybe the back of my head as well. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial here, and now I have
Order filled.
a lot of counterfeit money to burn.
Order filled. Order submitted.
Creates luxury kitchen appliances for those who appreciate the extraordinary. We are dedicated to the idea of less for a life of more. Because luxury is not an object calling attention to itself. Luxury is how we live. It is how we experience the world.
Order
it is
filled.
living life as it should be. We are for those who know. The difference is Gaggenau.
Order filled.
Rather than get rich quick, I believe in get rich slow. The high yield cash account at Public actually had higher rates than anything else I was able to find
Order
online.
submitted.
I don't want to be losing sleep over having made risky investments. I needed something stable that could really give me long-term financial benefits. I know my money's working hard for me, and I know I can access it anytime I need it.
Order submitted.
CoreWeave has been on a unique and truly extraordinary journey as we build
Order
the
submitted.
infrastructure that allows artificial intelligence to achieve its potential. We have built what is one of the most amazing companies and will be one of the most foundational companies on how artificial intelligence is delivered to the world.
CNBC. Live ambitiously.
Which American states are driving business, surviving, and thriving? The ultimate competition, America's top states for business, is back. This year, states are tackling tariffs, budget cuts, finding local strength in a time of national economic uncertainty. Last year, Virginia took the honors. Which state will be the top state for business this year?
America's top states for business. The list revealed Thursday, July 10th, and streaming on CNBC Plus.
We are just about a week away from revealing America's top states for business for 2025 in CNBC's annual study. Once again this year, the cost of insurance factors into our rankings. Scott Cohn joins us from the epicenter of a national crisis in California. Scott.
Good morning, Melissa. We're in Pacific Palisades. 6,800 structures were destroyed here.
Order
and 12
filled.
people died. Still a great deal of destruction
But as you can see, there is some rebuilding going on, and critically here in Southern California, people are getting insurance. Of course, they are paying more for it. State Farm, the state's largest insurer, just won approval for a 17% emergency rate hike. It is asking for another 13% for a total of 30%. Statewide, the online insurance marketplace Insurify projects an increase of 21% on average in California this year. But independent insurance agent Scott Wilk says all things considered, people will take it.
Early on in my career, pre-insurance crisis, if I had a customer's rate go up by $5 a month, I could be hearing about it and hearing complaints about it. Now people are just excited when their policy renews and it's still in force.
Of course, insurance companies dropped a whole lot of people from their roles, many of them before the wildfires in January. California's increases are not the highest in the nation. That distinction belongs to Louisiana, as you can see, then California, followed by Iowa. Yes, Iowa, Hawaii, and Minnesota, as insurance companies recalibrate their risk.
It's not just a phenomenon in a few states. We're seeing rising insurance costs all over, and partly that's a reflection of rising risk. We've seen a sharp increase in the frequency of disasters that create over $1 billion of damage.
It still, though, varies quite a bit from state to state and has become a really important factor, particularly here in California, but in many other states, in the cost of living. So we are factoring insurance into the cost of living category of America's top states for business this year. You can read all about that, read about our study, and see where your state ranks just about a week from now at topstates.cnbc.com. A week from tomorrow, Melissa, we will reveal America's top state for business.
We love all those clues, especially the diabolical ones. You seem to always stump us.
They're coming.
In the report, we mentioned that premiums across the board, across the United States are rising, and I'm wondering, this is the first time that insurance cost is actually factoring into this ranking. It's that much of a decisive factor.
We started factoring it in last year. In the cost of living category, we look at homeowners insurance, and we have a lot more data on it this year. We also are factoring in commercial insurance in the cost of doing business category. It really has become an important factor in the cost of living, in the cost of doing business.
Order filled.
Order filled.
Order
Saying this
submitted.
isn't going away. This is something that, as we continue to have higher costs of replacing housing or structures, and of course more climate risk, that it becomes a bigger deal. And the insurance companies are really trying to manage this, and yet they're very heavily regulated from state to state. So it really does vary, and it's very interesting how it does vary from state to state.
All right, Scott, thank you. Great to see you, Scott Cohn.
Okay, we got some breaking news right now from Rivian. Phil LeBeau joins us now with more. Phil, what's happening?
Andrew, Rivian's Q2 deliveries totaling 10,661 vehicles, roughly in line with expectations. Production for the quarter was 5,979 vehicles. Now, you might be sitting there saying, wait a second, that's far lower production than deliveries. Remember, they are in the midst of a transition from model year 25 up to model year 26. So that was expected that you would see slower production.
Order canceled.
Not unusual. Many automakers go through a
Order
similar type
submitted.
of thing. Their delivery guidance remains the same for all of 2025. They expect to deliver between 40 and 46,000 vehicles, so no change in their guidance, and they will be reporting their Q2 financial results on August 5th. Again, Rivian deliveries for the quarter, 10,661 vehicles. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, we're going to keep our eyes on that one. But coming up next, a wide-ranging interview with SEC Chairman Paul Atkins. From priorities in office to crypto regulation and the rise of tokenization of private companies. We're going to cover it all next. Squawk Box returns after this.
Today,
Order
is a
filled.
new age.
Circle is building the foundation
Order filled.
of our
Order
new
submitted.
economic system.
Order
we
filled.
can raise global economic prosperity.
Order submitted. Order
The
filled.
stock market is in chaos, and you need to
Order
take action
submitted.
now. My name is Mark Chaikin. I got my broker's license in 1966. I've invested through 9 recessions, several massive
Order
market
submitted.
panics, and many bull
Order
markets.
submitted.
Today, I have a warning. During volatile market moves like the one we're in now, most people freeze up. They just hope everything will get magically better. And it's a
Order
recipe
submitted.
for disaster. You need a big picture plan, and you need to take specific actions starting today. My new briefing lays out what we expect to happen in the markets this year and in 2026
Order
as
canceled.
well. This research is based on the market cycle that helped me call the bear markets of 2018 and 2022 and the roaring bull markets
Order
in both
submitted.
2023 and 2024. Visit the website on your screen to see
Order
my
filled.
detailed
Order
briefing in
filled.
full.
My husband, Dean, always worried that his diabetes would keep him from enjoying retirement. But
Order
Dexcom
filled.
G7 has made it easy for Dean to manage his sugar levels and spend more time in range. We're feeling good about the future, wherever it takes us.
A potentially pivotal June jobs report. What will the data indicate about the strength of the labor market, implications for the economy and the Fed, employment numbers and analysis? Squawk Box tomorrow 8:30 Eastern and streaming on CNBC Plus.
What's your flavor? Tell me what's your flavor?
Here's a taste of H-E-B Creamy Creations Mango Chamoy Sherbet. One of over 40 unique ice cream flavors created to satisfy Texans' cravings.
Tell me what's your flavor?
Today, let's paint with Behr, America's most trusted paint brand.
Wait, we don't have Behr.
Do we need that?
Well, this year's a paint and primer.
It just says ain't.
You bought 8.
Well, with Behr, you can paint a whole room for under $100. How much did you spend?
Like a lot more.
Oh,
I thought you said you researched this.
Aren't all paints the same?
no, they're not. Don't overpay for your next project. Get Behr quality at an everyday low price. Only at the Home Depot.
The next legendary big league is here. Athletes Unlimited Softball League. The best players on the game's biggest stage. This is legendary. AUSL on the networks of ESPN.
We are joined right now at the table by SEC Chairman Paul Atkins. We're thrilled to have you.
Thanks for having me.
A lot going on in Washington, as you know, drinking from a fire hose at this point. And we've got about 1 million questions about the market, about what you're doing, about what the regulatory landscape looks like. And so there's so many different places we can go. I wanted to start with actually something that happened on this set yesterday.
Order
if you'd
filled.
indulge me. Sure. Only because it was such an interesting conversation, and it's now even, again, in the press today, there's Vanguard's doing something similar, which is, you know, we've long
Order
talked
submitted.
about public markets and the benefits of public markets, but we've also talked about how in the private markets, there's so many companies that are still private and what it takes to get them to be public. But one of the things that's happening now is this idea of trying to let the public have access to the private markets. And there was a company that came on yesterday. They're quote unquote tokenizing, if you will, shares in a private company, in this case, SpaceX. You have Robinhood now doing something similar, but they're doing it outside of the United States in Europe. I'm so curious just how you, given where you sit, think about what's happening right now.
Well, Andrew, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for you all having me. You know, the markets have changed a lot, obviously, over the span of the last few decades. And so whereas the IPO market used to be like when I was a young lawyer starting in the mid-'80s out, that was a way for companies to raise money to build property, plant, equipment, develop their R&D and things like that. Apple, Microsoft, all of those companies started that way. Now, fast forward to now, you have really robust private markets, and so there hasn't been that drive to go public. And part of that also is not just the capital that's there in the private market, but also the impediments to be a public company. That's litigation threats, just the cost of doing of being public, and the other.
And so what is the answer then? Is the answer to make it more attractive to be a public company, or is the answer to make private markets more accessible to the public?
And more transparent.
Right.
I mean, that's a key aspect to this.
Right.
I mean, companies stay private for a reason. One of the reasons is they don't have to file as many things with the SEC. They're not the same disclosure requirements, but to protect investors, particularly average investors, you would think you want that transparency.
Right. Well, so that's exactly true. The law is clear as to public companies and what needs to be disclosed. And so what my goal is to make IPOs great again, basically, is to, there's been a lot of red tape and a lot of impediments, as I mentioned. I think if we address those sorts of aspects, I think we can make the public markets.
What are the 1, 2, 3 top things that you think you need to do to make being a public company, as you say, great again?
Well, first of all, the disclosure is important, but if you look at, I dare you all to look at an average 10K or a proxy statement and tell me, what actually is going on with the company. Over the years, there has been so much disclosure. A lot of it is CYA, basically, for potential lawsuits. So if we can address those sorts of aspects, I think we can make it better and more attractive to be a public company.
In the meantime, though, there are these efforts taking place to effectively change what it means to be a quote-unquote accredited investor in private markets. Historically, you've had to have $1 million as a sort of threshold, with the idea being that if you're wealthy enough and have over $1 million, you can afford to lose money or do something that's quote-unquote more risky because you don't have all the same disclosure requirements in a private company. But you, I think, have a different view of this.
Yeah, well, so I think we will definitely take a look at those rules to see, what should be tweaked, because there is a lot of demand on the investor side to be able to invest into private products. And so what that has to be done, I believe, very with our eyes open.
Order
because
submitted.
We don't want to have people go in where they don't understand what they're doing and they're not well equipped.
And so what would that mean? We talked about tests or other kinds of things to suggest there's an education process, and it's the education that would make you accredited, not how much money you actually have.
Well, so there are lots of different ways. I mean, part of the accredited investor standard came about because the idea is, well, if you don't know about it yourself, you can hire somebody, or you have the means to kind of ferret out the information and make decisions, or hire somebody to make decisions for you. So we need to take a look at that, but we also need to look at, for example, for long-term investing, for people investing for retirement in funds that are very long-lived. The aspects about private markets is its lack of liquidity is not what it is in public markets. Valuations are a little bit more tricky, let's just say. And so those sorts of things, you cannot go in to a private fund or a private investment and expect to turn that around.
What do you make of these sort of tokenization efforts? I mean, it seems to me that we have rules. We could debate whether the rules are the right rules and maybe they should be changed. But given the rules that are in place and the intention of the rule today, it seems to me that the effort to sort of quote-unquote tokenize something, an underlying asset, and to sort of use this structure is really effectively just a workaround to what the actual intent of the rule is.
Well, I guess I disagree with that a bit, because tokenization is an innovation. And we at the SEC should be focused on how do we advance innovation in the marketplace. And so I would argue here over the last several years, the SEC has been standing athwart efforts to innovate in the marketplace because things have been unclear. The rules have not been clear. We've had regulation through enforcement. That day is over. We are now, my whole goal is to make things transparent, from the regulatory aspect, and give people a firm foundation upon which to innovate and to come out with new products, and so that they know what they're doing.
I think there are two things to think about, Andrew, and that's tokenization of U.S. stocks, which is one thing which could drive a lot of cost savings for all parties involved.
I'm not against tokenization. I'm saying
settlement times would be reduced.
I'm talking about if you wanted to tokenize SpaceX, which is a private company.
And then there's also an access to private credit, I think you were mentioning, which is a complete individual investor access to private credit, which is also another sort of tricky area in that this is also, as you mentioned, it's not as much liquidity. Valuations are very difficult, particularly, I would imagine, for an individual investor. I mean, there are a lot of things here that are new frontiers for investors Where do you stand on that?
Well, two questions. So as far as tokenization, other innovations in the marketplace to make trading and holding securities easier and with quick settlement. My predecessor pushed for what we call T+1, meaning settlement and clearance the day after the trade, the trading day. And so tokenization and other aspects of doing that tokenization in the marketplace is yet the next step to have much more efficiency in the marketplace and certainty of having a trade settle. But way back in the 1960s, before our time, basically the New York Stock Exchange had to close for 2 days a week just to catch up on the paperwork from the stacks of paper certificates that were going from one brokerage to another. So then came DTCC and digitization of securities book entry. That was a huge advance, and so now we are in a new world for.
Where do you land on SPACs? We had sort of a big number of blank check companies go public a couple years ago. Most of them did not work out. It was a bad vintage, if you will. I've argued that SPACs could be very interesting if, and I don't know if you'll agree or disagree with me, if whoever the sponsor or promoter is locked in place for whatever duration of the forward-looking statements they make about a deal is. Meaning, if you want to come on TV or put in your documents or do whatever you want and say, here are the future prospects for this company, and we'll give you the numbers, what we think is 3 years out, 4 years out, and 5 years out, great. You should be locked for the 3, 4, and 5 years out. Part of the problem was that these promoters and sponsors of these things could technically, depending on where the stocks traded and other things, they had ways to get out, oftentimes 6 months into the process.
Yeah, well, so I don't have anything against SPACs, basically. I do think that, again, we were talking about IPOs and how the incidences of IPOs have really decreased over time. And so SPACs are yet another symptom of that because it's a much faster way of going public. You have a ready-made company. Disclosures, very important. Obviously, the structure of it is very important. But I think if we pay attention to going public and what are the impediments for people to access the public markets through IPOs and other means like that, I think the other situation will be able to solve itself.
So let me just a philosophical question, because what I hear you saying is two things at the same time. One is I want to fix the system so that the IPO market is a more attractive place to be. And if I do that, I won't necessarily have to deal with tokenizing private companies, and I won't have to really think too much about SPACs because those will be less attractive options compared to going public. My question is, since we all have to walk and chew gum at the same time, what do you do while you're working on fixing the IPO system to make it more attractive? You have all of these other things going on not in the background, in the foreground.
Right.
What do you do about that?
Well, so that's, I mean, I've been on the job for 2 months, which is great. And again, like you said, drinking from a fire hose. So we will, we are going about it. We have a really good program, I think, now addressing the crypto markets. So we have that underway, working with folks in the administration and on the Hill. So there's, moving afoot with bills, 2 bills in particular on the Hill. So with respect to the IPO market, you will start seeing our proposals coming out. We obviously are cognizant of what's going on. There have been new rules adopted by the Commission in the last couple of years regarding SPACs. Those were very rather controversial, let's say. So we'll be looking at all of those things. So you can't build Rome in overnight, but we'll be addressing that.
Is there a time or place for the SEC to say we should halt the tokenization of private companies for now until we can examine this and the impact to the markets and to investors?
Well, again, I think, we have our rules. Well, we have our rules. And again, I'm looking at that as an innovative way to address, the workings of the marketplace. I don't view that as a wholesale new type of product. And so I view that as beneficial to the markets. And obviously, we will be adjusting our rules.
Okay, well, Rome wasn't built in a day, and this interview isn't built in a day or even a segment either, because we're going to take a quick pause, and we're going to come back with Paul Atkins right after this. Slip in a quick break.
Order submitted.
Don't go anywhere.
Order submitted.
Comcast Business doesn't just power businesses. We help turn them into logistics mastering, supply chain transforming, seamlessly restocking, frictionless paying, poke bowl ordering, cyber securing, mobile access granting, data managing. Welcome to the worlding modern businesses. Powering the engine of modern business, Comcast Business.
In the age of AI, smarter threats need even smarter protection. CrowdStrike Charlotte AI is delivering the future of cybersecurity for what's now and what's next. Built on the intelligence of every breach we stop and refined by human expertise, Charlotte AI gets smarter so your business stays safer. So you can build for tomorrow with confidence and efficiency and protect what matters most. That's why the businesses you trust CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike. We stop breaches.
Silver is at a 10-year high. Kootenai Silver boasts one of the largest resources owned by a junior company. With the new high-grade discovery in Mexico, the potential for growth and leverage to silver is significant. Kootenai Silver.
Every morning, even before the markets open, I'm planning my moves that I make throughout the day. When you're actively trading, the fees really start to add up, and that eats directly into your potential returns. I found that Public is really the only platform that offers rebates on your option trades, which help offset those costs. For me, when it comes to investing, timing is everything, and Public allows me to get a step ahead.
You make it through security so fast, the agents applaud. Your travel itineraries are so well written.
Order
you're on
submitted.
the bestseller list. And you have access to lounges that don't officially exist. That's why you rent with National, where you can skip the counter and choose any vehicle on the Emerald Isle. Because travel isn't a competition. Except that it is. And you're winning.
Introducing CNBC Plus, a new streaming platform from the #1 source in business news. On-the-go access to international financial markets, business news, and analysis as it happens. Bell-to-bell global live stream, CNBC Plus real-time data, and full episodes of CNBC's Business Day lineup on demand. CNBC Plus. Access any market, anytime, anywhere. Start streaming at cnbc.com/plus.
Order filled. Order
Welcome back to Squawk
submitted.
Box this morning, right here on
Order
CNBC. We're
canceled.
speaking with the SEC Chairman Paul Atkins, and we're thrilled to have him at the table. I have a question about insider trading, an issue that the SEC
Order submitted.
has always sort of oversaw, but there hasn't been a huge number of insider trading cases in recent years. I mean, not big famous ones, but there's this whole crypto industry that is not really regulated, and I'm curious what you think of that. Which is to say that there's lots of people doing things. And the reason I mention this is 3 or 4 months ago, if you remember, somebody developed a Sorkin coin briefly for a hot minute, worth I think, a couple $100 million at some point.
Wow.
It was a
Nice.
wild thing. And what I saw happening was people were creating these Telegram and Signal accounts, and they were all talking to each other about how they were going to buy and sell. I mean, it was literally like the pools of the 1920s. It was a very interesting thing to watch. And the question, just to see how it was happening, and I was curious where you think the SEC should play in that universe.
Well, I think there has been a fair amount of regulation in that area, or regulatory activity, over the last few years, which has been also part of the problem of innovation. But getting back to it, fraud is fraud,
Right.
and the mission of the SEC is to look after investors, protect investors, but also look after capital formation and orderly and efficient markets. So those are all important aspects of our mission. So the SEC has been very active on that.
Do you have different ideas about how companies communicate with the public, though? Because for so long it was, you had to put your statement on both Edgar, but really on Business Wire or something like that. And now, obviously, you can go on Twitter, you can do this, but people are going on podcasts. Obviously, they come on places like Squawk. But how you think about sort of broadly pushing out all of this information at the same time?
Well, so the markets live on information, obviously, and that's why inside trading comes up, very often. As far as people who have more information than others and abuse their aspect there. But as far as the access to information, that's what's so wonderful about modern markets is that information is all over the place, but it's up to the company, up to the issuer.
What do you think about Congress? So this is going to be a bite the hand that feeds you situation. But no, I remember talking to Jay Clayton about this. I've always thought it should be the SEC who could somehow step in and start to really look at insider trading in Congress, because we've had a lot of questions about whether it's Nancy Pelosi and that family, and there's so many examples where you go to yourself, well, how is it possible that these people are trading? Do you think there should be a rule in place that makes it much more complicated or difficult, or a disclosure that doesn't exist today?
Well, a few years ago, Congress did enact a rule that's called the Stock Act.
Yep,
and so
I'm aware of it, but it doesn't seem to have shifted the balance. When you see some of the disclosures and also how well they've done, you say to yourself, how is that happening?
Well, I've seen there are all sorts of different studies as to that, whether or not there's any evidence of it. The SEC gets literally thousands and thousands of tips from all over the place coming in, from the net and from people on the outside, whistleblowers and whatnot. So obviously we take all, tips seriously and look into them. So obviously I can't comment on anything, but just let's say that the SEC is very active.
I want to get back to our conversation about private companies, private credit. These are things that individual investors want to have access to. How do you view the role of the SEC in terms of products that investors want to have access to, products that investors should have access to, and what your role is? Or is it your role to put up guardrails here? Is it your role to just say all these products, as long as you disclose properly, they are available to individual investors, or are there some products that are not a good idea for individual investors, and the SEC will take a more activist standpoint?
Well, right now we are at a cusp of where we need to look at the rules and how they apply. But obviously there are standards for public disclosure, and in the private markets, because of these particular products are not publicly registered, those rules of disclosure don't necessarily apply. But the private markets have developed a lot over the last 40 years, and institutional investors and others make demands on issuers for information. So there's been kind of a leveling of the amount of information that's in both of them.
But a separate issue, private credit, which is the new, it's been done on Wall Street for, 10 years, maybe more. But in terms of access by individual investors, that's only opening up right now. Is that an area that investors should have access to now that, some might argue here that we're in sort of the waning days of private credit, and that investors will be marketed the worst of the credits out there that aren't rated properly, that are, the dregs of what's left over that the institutions don't want.
Well, I'm afraid of that too, obviously. And so we will, as we look at, the accredited investor standard and other things, we'll be cognizant of that. And as I said earlier, it's very important to have, good standards as to, what retail investors would be getting into.
Chairman Atkins, we are out of time. I wish we could continue this. I want to talk about semi-liquid investments, BREIT, and some of those kind of things that people want to know. There's so much to do. Come on back, sir. Thank you.
I'd be happy to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa, thank you. We're going to be handing it off to our friends on Squawk on the Street. They're coming up next.
With the vision to see what's possible and the grit to make it happen, Morgan Stanley can help create the future only you can see.
Are you prepared to counter a cyber attack? Today's threats are faster, malicious, more relentless. Cycurion ARX outpaces threats with 4 synchronized defense layers, creating an impenetrable ecosystem. Cycurion ARX, a solution that safeguards your most critical assets, seamlessly deployed across all cloud environments to predict and prevent. Cycurion, securing what matters most.
Investment opportunities are everywhere you turn. Do you charge forward? Freeze in your tracks? Or let curiosity light the way? At T. Rowe Price, we're asking smart questions about opportunities like AI and how the industry's born to support AI might better support us all. Better questions, better outcomes. T. Rowe Price.
Quitting nicotine with support makes all the difference. Outsmart nicotine every step of the way with X Program.
Some things are just better at home. Our flooring experts come to you so you can compare hundreds of samples in your home. Right now, get up to 40% off, no interest for 24 months, and no money down.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today.
To the end zone for the touchdown. Oh my goodness.
Good Wednesday morning. Welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm David Faber alongside Jim Cramer. We're live from Post 9 at the New York Stock Exchange. Carl enjoying a well-deserved day off. Oh, yeah. Yes, as we all deserve them as well. Take a look at futures. I don't know. What's that say to you? Anything? Anything at all?
You know, we have a whole show to do.
Yeah, we got a whole show. Exactly. That's what it says to me as well. Thanks, Jim. Our roadmap does begin with a pause for the big tech run-up. This after a surge of more than 20% over the last 3 months. The NASDAQ did notch its first decline in 6 sessions. And as you just saw, futures, well, doesn't say much anything right now, but maybe a bit of softness. We're going to talk about the big banks because they're boosting dividends, and that follows this week's stress tests. We're talking about Citi, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, among others that are also trading at record highs. And OpenAI's Sam Altman with some strong words from Meta and the company's recent talent poaching spree. That is Meta coming after a lot of OpenAI employees. And there you see it. Missionaries will beat mercenaries. Let's start, though, with the recent run-up in technology stocks. Last night on Mad Money, Jim unveiled a new acronym for 3 of the mega caps. Take a listen.
Not FANG, not Magnificent Seven, just M&M's. The sole survivors of the brutal quarter from what used to be the most captivating group in the market. Yep, only 3 of the mega caps finished the first half at all-time highs. And it's worth trying to figure out how that happened. How did Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Meta manage to triumph? Especially when all of their stocks had hit some pretty hideous darn levels early in the quarter.
No, all right. What's it all mean?
NVIDIA was marked up. I mean, that's what went to 158. Remember, this is just who finished at the high. I'm trying to distinguish between the companies that came in hot and then faltered, and the companies that really delivered. And look, and I think the ones that delivered, David, very interesting. Meta turned out to be cheap, as you knew. And Microsoft, where they're thinking about laying off as many as 9,000 employees in the latest round. Microsoft may be the company that uses AI the most. Or they might just say, you know what, we finished this Xbox acquisition. Why do we need it? We are seeing, David.
Well,
AI
but you mean
being
the
used in
Activision, not
The
Xbox. Yeah, you said Xbox.
Well, Activision. Well, look, I think
Different.
well, that's now Xbox, but I do feel that there's been two waves of layoffs, May and June. They're firing employees. Now, they're firing employees and they're making the numbers. Remember, the AWS, the reason why they made the numbers was that they were able to do 33%. The previous quarter, they did 31. People were looking for 31.9.
All right, well, you're referring to a Seattle Times story in which they say the company could lay off as many as 9,000 employees. Of a 228,000 employee worldwide base, that would be roughly 3%. Right. Maybe even as much as almost 4%, they say, of the employee base. I want to get to the ADP number, though, because we usually don't talk about it this early in the show, but it was a negative 33,000 or so.
It was really wrong last time, so
it
we
was
don't even
really
know.
wrong last time. But I mentioned it in light of the market yesterday, Jim, where value showed some resurgence. Now, it may have simply been a function of the first day of a new quarter, of a new half.
Down. That's
momentum going the other way. But do you think that there is perhaps a bid for value in the market because of an expectation of, and I know I shouldn't even say this because we're not supposed to talk about it anymore, but a Fed rate cut as soon as July?
I just watched Jay Powell, Chairman Powell, say no.
Yesterday.
That we have to see. Yeah.
From Centra.
I mean, look, when I spoke to Andy Jassy, who, by the way, thinks the consumer is robust, not weak, Andy Jassy said, look, a lot of pull forward. We got a lot of low prices. We can't make a judgment yet. Prices are not up, despite there was a story saying that he was being hurt by inflation. The story was completely inaccurate. Now, that's not unusual. You and I know that happens. But no, it's too soon to tell. And that's why Jay is, like, being smart.
Okay. All right, so what do you attribute the
Order
move
canceled.
yesterday, which we just showed? Momentum had a bad day.
Order
Value had a
canceled.
good day. Does that continue?
Order
or is
canceled.
that over and done with?
No,
So
Order
you're all
canceled.
about M&Ms
No,
now.
it's individual stocks. It's individual
Order
stock stories.
canceled.
When we see stuff like that, we can look at the individual stocks that ran up, and then we can look at the
Order
earnings that are about to
canceled.
start in a couple of weeks, and we'll say, well, that was dumb. That was stupid. Why did I buy that stuff? So, I mean, people, it was like the Russell. Remember when the Russell was up, and people said, well,
Yes,
the Russell
we're
was
finally
back?
getting to a broader market.
All this
Yes, I
stuff
do
is
remember that, of
nonsense.
course.
The only safety in this market is growth. So when you see a J&J up $3 and they don't have a lot of growth, I am not going to jump into that. When you see Hershey up $5 and they don't have growth, I'm not there. When you see Constellation Brands, which just got hammered in the earnings, but stock up yesterday, I'm not buying it. So let's just forget, let's just hedge fund talk. I want to talk about what people should do, not what
All
the
right,
hedge
so
funds
it's just
Order
the same
filled.
story, same
Order
playbook,
submitted.
essentially, with an even smaller number, but nonetheless, same playbook we've been seeing for
except
years.
Thoma Bravo's back buying stuff.
That's a small deal.
Well, I'm just saying they're
Potential
back
Barron
buying
deal.
that stuff that they like to buy.
Yeah.
Multiple stuff.
All right, speaking of which, Tesla's not a part, of course, of the new acronym from Jim, but they do have their delivery
They got
figures
knocked out.
for the second quarter, and Phil LeBeau has them for us. Phil, how they looking?
They're roughly in line with expectations, David. 384,122 vehicles delivered in the second quarter by Tesla. The consensus estimate on FactSet going into this morning was 387,000. I wouldn't call this a miss. I'd say roughly in the neighborhood of what people were expecting. We should point out the production coming in at 410, 244 vehicles. If you're looking at shares and saying, well, that's a decent little pop on shares of Tesla on these delivery numbers, keep in mind that there were a number of analysts, and I read probably 10 notes in the last couple of days. A number of those analysts were expecting the delivery number to come in closer to 355,000, maybe 360,000. So a little bit better than some of the analysts were expecting. Tesla delivering 384,122 vehicles, just shy of the consensus estimate of 387,000. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
Yeah, and we can see the stock is reacting positively to that. Phil, yesterday it was a lot of back and forth as well between sort of us as I tried to understand. You know, we were trying to make we were trying to explain the difference between regulatory credits that Tesla has lived off of to help boost earnings in terms of greenhouse gas emissions versus the big beautiful bill, which is doing away with the tax credits that buyers get when they buy it. But on that other side, which has been so important to Tesla, I know you've done reporting on this, and I've been asking you about it. Nothing has changed as of now. Is that correct?
Correct. Nothing has changed, and that is tied into the greenhouse gas emissions. If the EPA and the White House at some point make a move to make a change there. That may have huge implications for Tesla. But those zero-emission vehicle credits, of which you pointed out yesterday, I think last year it was $2.4 billion, that they received money from other automakers and other companies outside of the auto industry, where those companies need those credits in order to meet greenhouse gas emission standards. They buy those credits from Tesla, from other companies. Rivian sells greenhouse gas emission credits. So that's how that stands right there, David. That's very real money to the bottom line of Tesla. But that has not changed at all. The big, beautiful bill completely focused on the $7,500 credit that you or I or anybody would get for buying an electric vehicle. That's the change that's happening there. And I think that the plan, according to the Senate, the bill that was passed by the Senate, that $7,500 discount, it goes away after September 30th. Let's see if the changes now that it's back in the House, but that's where things stand right now.
All right, so Phil, do you think one of the things people are excited about is the China numbers? Shipments rise in June, first time in 2025?
I wouldn't get excited, but I would say if you're a Tesla investor, this is welcome news. I think it was 6 straight months where you had declining sales. And now that you have the Juniper models that are over there, filtering into the deliveries, it's clear that they perhaps have built a floor in there, Jim. But that market is so brutally competitive. 1 month is not enough to say, okay, well, the worst is over in China. Who knows what this is going to look like over the next couple of months? Because we really don't know if the price war is over in China when it comes to electric vehicles. And that really has been killing Tesla, killing all automakers, because what's happening there is too much capacity, building too many vehicles. So what do these automakers do in China? They slash their prices. And that's what's really killing profitability over in that market right now.
Phil, thank you. Phil LeBeau, of course, with those latest U.S. numbers from Tesla. You can see, of course, that is helping the stock.
The communists are great capitalists.
BYD's got a lot of really good automobiles. I hear it. You hear it from people who obviously have exposure to those automobiles, not just in China, but in other markets around the world. Jim, I want to get back to the Microsoft story that we mentioned at the top, reported by the Seattle Times. I know our Steve Kovac, who follows the company closely, has more as well on these layoffs, which I guess follow some layoffs that occurred only a few months ago as well, Steve.
Yeah, that's right, David. So Microsoft telling me they're laying off less than 4% of their total workforce. This is a global situation, all tenures, all levels across the board. And they tell me that would be approximately 9,000 employees based on their most recent employee headcounts. This, like you said, David, this is on top of the 6,000 employees that they laid off in May, so bringing the total to approximately 15,000 for this year so far. That's more than they laid off back in the beginning of 2023, when they laid off about 13,000 employees after all that overhiring during the pandemic. Let me read you a statement. They're telling me, quote, we continue to implement organizational changes necessary to best position the company and teams for success in a dynamic marketplace. Now, of course, there's another question about what role or factor does AI play in these layoffs. It doesn't seem like that's been called out specifically, but a Microsoft spokesperson did tell me that employees are going to be using these cuts to spend more time focusing on what they say is meaningful work, and this kind of stuck out to me, by leveraging new technologies and capabilities. You could read that as AI, you could read that as Copilot, you could read that as something else, but that is an interesting thing that stuck out to me here. So again, Microsoft here laying off 4% or less of employees, which would be about 9,000 employees in total, David. 15,000 for the year, David.
Right, for the 15,000 for the year. Is that normal course, though? You said, obviously, it may exceed what they did in 23, but I would assume they're always looking to, potentially cut, obviously hire in other areas as well.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, AI is one area they're going to keep adding on to. It looks like the gaming division, the Xbox gaming division, I'm seeing some headlines across from Bloomberg and others that there are some really deep cuts going on there, including over at King, which is, of course, part of Activision that they purchased a couple years ago. And they also just some of the language around this announcement too, David. It sounds like a lot of it is targeting middle management and people like that in order to kind of increase efficiencies. We've seen that at Meta and so many other companies. So that seems to be the real key thing here. Again, not really blaming AI or anything like we've heard Andy Jassy do.
Got it. All right, Steve. Thank you, Steve Kovac.
Listen to me.
I'm listening. I always listen to you.
Remember when we all read Orwell?
It's a long. Actually, I did reread 1984. I reread that. But yes.
I mean, the whole shooting match down and out in Paris and London. One of the themes of all of this work is just that most people lie, and you lie. You pass pamphlets out in Paris. It's supposed to be like meaningful work. Okay. Here's something that I'm tired of. I'm tired of hearing that people are moving to more meaningful work. Were they doing meaningless work? In Orwellian terms, what we're saying is this may be nonsense. This whole AI, we bring in AI, they were doing what? And now they're doing what? They were doing meaningless work and now they're doing meaningful work? No, they were. Either they were doing Soviet work, we pretend to work and you pretend to pay, or I would contend that it's all nonsense. And it's just a way to fire people. And if you're Andy Jassy, you're not bringing in more people. You're bringing in more robots. If you're these companies, they have too many people.
Right. I mean, in the case of Amazon, we're talking largely about distribution centers and physical work, whereas with Microsoft, we're talking about middle managers and...
Right. I mean, like, the typical interview that we have, that everybody has is, well, how much of these layoffs are AI? Well, 1,420. Well, why is that? You see, what we're doing is we're shifting people from meaningless work to meaningful. We have to break through Orwell, okay? And we have to just say, these companies have too many people and trying to make the quarter. It's no different from what we used to see from other companies.
Right.
I mean, I'm not talking U.S. Steel. I am saying they have too many people.
As we'd expect, right.
They didn't do AI. What AI?
On a much smaller level, we got
AI.
I mean, come on. No, Carl's not here because he's on vacation.
Right.
Don't get anybody concerned.
No, I'm saying that we have to break out of the Orwellian fixation that the reason why they're laying people off is because of AI. They're laying people off because they got too many people and they want to make the damn number.
Yeah, exactly. Same reason.
They want to make the number.
Same reason on a smaller level, Warner Music
got to make the number.
Is going to cut jobs to slash costs by $300 million.
Those people are less equal than others.
Understood. Speaking of AI. The back and forth between your friend Mr. Zuckerberg and Sam Altman has gotten fairly interesting. It is a talent war. It is a talent war. And if you missed it, Altman in a Slack conversation, I guess, with some of the employees says, they've gotten a few great people for sure, but on the whole, it's hard to overstate how much they didn't get their top people and had to go quite far down their list. They've been trying to recruit people for a super long time. There's that. All these people, they had supered everything. And I've lost track of how many people from here they've tried to be they've tried to get to be their chief scientists. I'm proud of how mission-oriented our industry is as a whole. Of course, there will always be some mercenaries.
Yes. I mean, it's free agency. It's like the NBA. I mean, what is he talking about all? Does he understand sports at all?
I have no idea whether he has a affection for sports the way that you and I do.
It's like Steinbrenner in the old days.
Well, Altman wants to win too, and he's incredibly competitive as well.
Open the wallet, you win.
Harder, perhaps, for OpenAI. I mean, OpenAI has significant resources as well that it can draw on. But one thing it doesn't have right now is a publicly traded stock, certainly, and won't have for quite some time. In fact, it's in the midst of a very complicated change in its entire capital structure as well.
There are stars, okay? Stars can command a multiple.
I'll tell you, the one I come back to is this Alexander Wang, who's running the entire effort there.
Yeah, how's he doing?
Scale AI, they valued it at $14 billion. They bought 49% of it, Meta. That whole thing is, wow. He took $3 billion out, but he left Scale AI to sort of fend for itself. Then it lost Alphabet, and it lost a number of its customers. Now Meta's apparently potentially going to make that up for Scale AI. Right. Meanwhile, let's find out how much they're giving him in stock, a Meta stock as well, not just paying for his company.
Is he a mercenary?
Was he worth? How many billions was one man worth there?
The Legion versus the Marines?
He was worth more than Vikram Pandit. Remember that one?
You're talking Citi?
Where they bought his hedge fund?
Citi's increase in dividend.
We're going to come back to the banks. Actually, let's do that. Let's take a break. We want to take a break?
AI says we should take a break.
Yeah, let's take a break. Take a look at
AI
futures.
says the Phillies should
We'll come
win.
back on the other side if we have time.
AI's a spreadsheet.
We got a mad dash. I'll just keep talking. He'll keep talking, but we won't be talking to each other. More Squawk on the Street. Straight ahead.
Orwell to the Wigan Pier.
Today is a new age.
Circle is building the foundation of our new economic system. We can raise global economic prosperity.
Is this your dream of retirement? How about this sweet deal? I like fishing. Or is this a little more your style? Retiring well isn't a guarantee, it's a goal. It's easy when markets are going up. But what about when they're not? That's why you need this.
Call for Fisher's Retirement Survival Kit, featuring your guide to surviving market volatility, our stock market outlook, plus the Fisher Investments Difference. 3 indispensable guides, yours free for calling 1-800-213-5317.
Fisher Investments' disciplined approach will help see you through the market's ups and downs and give you the confidence you need to reach a comfortable retirement. And our fees are structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Call now for your free retirement survival kit. 1-800-213-5317.
See if your dream retirement is on track.
If your portfolio is $1 million or more, call Fisher today. Call 1-800-213-5317.
I know how to make slick-looking goggles/glasses, but I have no idea how to make slick-looking social media stuff.
But GoDaddy Aero uses AI to create social content out of thin air, like this one.
Walton Goggins goggle glasses are great gifts for all guys and gals.
Good morning. Welcome to CNBC Plus. Where to?
Countdown to the opening bell. Don't go anywhere.
New York for the Open.
On our way.
CNBC Plus, on-the-go access to global market data, news, and analysis as it happens. Access any market, anytime, anywhere with CNBC Plus. Start streaming at cnbc.com/plus.
Flavors. There's an H-E-B Creamy Creations flavor for every craving in Texas. Just one more reason. Here, everything's better.
We are a true 100% grower-owned cooperative.
We just love to farm. You know, you feed people around the world, so it's very fulfilling.
When I look at what we're producing, I know the high quality. I know the animal welfare standards behind it.
The turkeys, they mean something to us. We really care about how they're doing and how they're feeling, so we really invest all of ourselves into it, just like you'd want for your own family.
And it's nice to partner with someone like Dietz & Watson that feels the same way. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
All right, welcome back. Nation's biggest banks hiking dividends, announcing some buybacks as well. This after they all passed the Federal Reserve's most recent stress test. Goldman Sachs raises its dividend by 33%. Morgan Stanley and J.P. Morgan also raised dividends. They also authorized new stock buybacks. Bank of America, Citi, Wells Fargo. They also boost their shareholder returns, largely through dividend increases, Jim. I had a quick cheat sheet, but of course I'm a washing paper here. I can't find it right in front of me here. Here it is. Not unexpected though. Right. We talked about the stress test the other day. You like this sector though?
Oh, I love this sector. This sector has what I call mojo. All right, that's a technical term. Bank of America with 7.7. Well, let's look at the dividends. It's 2.33. Citi $2.40. Well, I don't know. I mean, 2.78. Goldman with that big 33%, they're still 2.26. J.P. Morgan, we know that they did the buyback too. They're 2.07. And how about this, David? Morgan Stanley, 2.84. Interesting.
2.84
for yield.
Percent yield.
Like
$1 a share is the dividend.
Yeah, I like
There's
that.
Goldman stock price,
and then Wells,
of course.
that's 12.5. You know, Wells had all these problems, and they got the uncapped. Sharp is being very
Wells is on a roll now, right? In many ways, in terms of at least. I mean, the stress test now
Wells
behind it, the cap behind it.
He can do whatever he wants. The world's his oyster. Sharp.
Charlie Sharp, yeah.
World's his oyster.
Is that still your favorite of this group, or not really? Or you don't have a favorite?
I have to go with the Golden Slacks. I got to go here with Solomon. I mean, Solomon is a very aggressive guy, and he's putting a lot of money in. And I'm late. Look, David, there's an IPO Figma. There's an IPO almost every day now. And we got some M&A coming. I mean, I got to tell you, I think Goldman's in good shape. Morgan Stanley's got the most, let's say, the even revenue stream, so it's going to give you the highest multiple. Maybe that goes to 18.
Yeah, advisory wealth
Maybe that
management,
goes to
obviously,
18
very
times
important
earnings.
part of their franchise.
Wealth management is
still
king.
IPO is still
Schwab
important to
is
them.
6 times.
Say again?
Schwab, because its wealth management is incredibly highly valued.
Highly valued.
Oh yeah, Schwab.
Yes, that. Yeah.
Who makes more money, Larry Fink or Steve Schwarzman? Probably.
Wait, that's BlackRock and Blackstone.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with Schwab? Nothing.
I don't know. I just kind of liked it.
It just popped into your head.
Yeah, actually,
Steven Schwarzman is a lot richer than Larry Fink.
Yeah,
a lot richer.
And how
so much richer. And by the way, huge foundation. I don't think people realize the Schwarzman Foundation. I've been taught what they've got and what they've got here in the U.S. and how large it is.
High. I won at Abington High and everything I played. Now it's Schwarzman Stadium. They were the Galloping Ghosts when I crushed them.
Got a lot of money to give away.
Schwarzman Stadium. Who names a public high school? That's pretty not bad. David, we have so much to talk about.
So much. And you know what? We're going to take a break. We're going to let you think about your mad dash.
Oh, yeah.
Then we're going to come back and talk.
I'm paying an homage to Catalonia, my mad dash.
We're going to talk about all of it. You're going to pay an homage to Catalonia.
Yeah, AI.
Okay. Great. I look forward to that. Would you like another look at futures? You would? Okay. Take a look. There it is. We're going to be down a little bit when Squawk on the Street returns.
The potentially pivotal June jobs report. What will the data indicate about the strength of the labor market? Implications for the economy and the Fed. Employment numbers and analysis. Squawk Box tomorrow 8:30 Eastern and streaming on CNBC+.
The next legendary big league is here. Athletes Unlimited Softball League. The best players on the game's biggest stage. This is legendary. AUSL on the networks of ESPN.
Today, let's paint with Behr, America's most trusted.
Good morning. We got 5 minutes. I think we're gonna pump later. 15 minutes is towards oversold. So maybe a little pump later on today. No, you can't trade. It's Monday for the challenge trade day. Damn it. YouTube people. You made any money on your TPT? I didn't want to wake up at all.
Discover why more cardiologists recommend Super Beats for heart health than any other at livehuman.com.
You see Tesla? Oh, it was up 7%. Now it's 4%.
Customer satisfaction. Hi, my friend Linda has you guys and gets way better coverage than I do. Sounds like Linda has.
Was that pre-loan in the call?
Breaking up a little. Are you really ranked #1 in coverage? Yep. And
Oh, he was on 623. Dang, that's expensive. $9.80. So that's like $980.
Switch to the carrier ranked #1 in network coverage satisfaction. Call or visit Consumer Cellular today.
Well,
At Public,
718. Yeah, he still has it.
I know my money's working hard for me, and I know I can access it anytime I need it. It's very simple. Better rates mean faster growth, and that's exactly what I need.
Yeah, even this pump, I don't think it's green because Tesla's been red for a lot of days. Yeah, this delivery wasn't that good. It's just on point. At first, they thought it was good, but it's oh no, it's just expected. Yeah.
Invest like the future.
The opening bell is brought to you by Nuveen. Invest like the future is watching.
Welcome back. Let's get to a mad dash, and we'll also get an opening bell a few minutes from now.
Let's talk capitalism. I had Aaron Barton on the show. One man. I came out the next day and said, I think this is a pretty good situation for the mad dash. I remember it. Stock jumped $100. Well, this morning, there's 3.4.
I need 6 more hundred. I'll pass this trade day eval. start milking
Remember,
them.
what they have is an anti-drone, as you saw.
Oh, no, last week when it had a 90% off.
Going to them. But I would point out that an anti-drone is probably
Monday. Yeah, also Monday. I'm gonna YOLO that.
I do hope that we do that.
Oh, Chris, did you get the Bidius 10K, free 10K challenge? On the code I gave? Yeah, just YOLO that, because you can't win trading it normally. Yeah. I think someone last month got like 500,000 profit, so pretty sure they just YOLO. We got 2 minutes. Let's go.
And Ukraine they're both in terms of combating drones and building their own. They're kind of, they're creating an industry, by the way. Even when they ever actually are at peace, then they have an opportunity to build something.
We should do Ukraine side if only just to see how the new battles work.
Well, the president has stopped the latest shipment of Patriot missiles for Ukraine to defend itself.
I know that RTX has done a remarkable job with the Patriot missile to be able to defend Ukraine. And I think that but my politics don't matter. But I would say that if you want to know how to fight in the new world, just back in Ukraine. Push it back in Russia doesn't make sense. This is not 1940.
I hope it drops so we can long again. I got some of it. I need like 4 more thousand or 3 more thousand to pass. Yeah, it's taking a long time. I got another 150 I had to start working on it too.
Centene. Oh, that's not good. When Michael Myers ran,
I think it's gonna pump a dump that open. Yeah. At 15 minutes, if it curve up, I'm gonna long. But wait for the bot to go long. Bot got over 100 points. Here we go. Yeah, it's always pumped at the open. That's a drop. Down to only up 2%. Yeah, those calls are right. Check my QQQ puts. My puts is down 9%. Not bad.
David, this event has raised $1 billion since 1980. Dr. John Dubois, my cousin, is in it, and I give every single year. It's a fantastic charity. 100% good. Wonderful. Fighting cancer.
All right, let's come back to Centene, because I did a little reporting on it as well this morning, and you were making the point. Listen, we're talking about a company whose earnings estimates now from the analysts
Yeah, not a good open.
Reduction in guidance from
Didn't really move much.
and the polling guidance have been cut in half. In half. You were talking about a company that was seen to earn perhaps as much as $7.25 a share this year. Now estimates, I saw one from UBS this morning, $3.25, I believe it was. Yeah, got that right.
They were the ACA. They understood the ACA better than anyone. They really
are a big participant in the marketplace for insurance, essentially what we've called Obamacare.
Right.
And it appears, well, the buy side, I was told, was preparing for bad numbers, and the sell side, well, this was even worse. In terms of they participate in the exchanges, and how do you win in the exchanges? Well, you come in with the lowest price.
That's what Michael Nadler used to do.
Yeah, choppy.
Administration of Medicaid, we're not talking about like that.
Well, this is a separate part of it. We'll get to that. So let's start with the exchanges.
Any news coming out? Let me see.
Price, but maybe people, to your point, are thinking this is my last year.
That's just oil.
Potentially is going to happen in that big beautiful bill to use my health insurance.
I guess people trade oil.
Use it for everything I possibly can. But then it bounce back. And a sicker population. We know that there's been a mental health crisis in the country as well. I'm guessing here to a certain extent, but something was going on with the exchanges where they just didn't price it properly.
Right, but Michael used to know, he knew down to the zip code. I told him where my daughter was, and he said, oh, that's where the Siskiyou Indians, Native Americans are. And the Siskiyou Indians historically have issues, and you're not going to get any
Yeah, that's a good point. Wow.
He knew zip codes.
Right.
You know who else knew zip codes?
Who?
Fishman from Proud.
Did he? They're both.
They were.
Oh, you in?
Yeah. Who cares who's tighten some CEOs?
That's true.
Well, the CEO here, and I've been there for
Yeah, 15 minutes over so too.
About 4 years.
Or near
There's
over so.
An activist that's been in there, Politan, for quite some time as well. But none of it going the way you.
Oh, about no. My 15 is over, so 3 minutes still going up.
And again, the cuts that are coming, and they are very significant in this bill. Maybe that also motivates the patient population to go as much healthcare as they possibly can before it goes. I don't know.
COVID, people knew to go in and start doing hips and knees.
Right.
David, do they cut the Medicaid as much as the big break that I get, for instance?
I don't know.
See, I get it, big break. Now that's because why?
Yeah, he doesn't do much stuff
Why
like that one.
Medicare? No, in life. Why do I get a great tax break?
Oh, what different rich?
Exactly. It's about time.
It is. I've been saying that.
I mean,
You're underfunded.
now we all do want to pay as few taxes as possible, and it's tax good. You
I feel like I've been maxed out here in New York City at
You
14.4.
can avoid, but not
State
evade.
and local.
But I was, called Mike down and I said,
What,
wow,
30?
this is a windfall for someone who is doing okay. I'm proud of how I
Oh, it's cheap. I like it.
also get a windfall.
Easy to pass too.
I did want to mention a couple of those other names. I want to look at Oscar too. There's Molina.
Yeah, that's where everybody's milking it. What's his name? Carcass is only doing 150.
Molina and then Oscar. For
Yeah.
That's more of the exchanges. They're in all
I want at least 2 of that if I can, and the rest 25K.
Oscar's getting crushed.
I only have 1 spot left, so I can buy 150K.
That we've been telling you about. By the way, Triple B.
But they say you can. They say you can buy it, pass, and leave it parked up to 5, I think.
I know. We got to speak to Mark Bertolini. I'm joking and Grouse. He happens to be really
Yeah,
sensational.
I mean it's a good deal, so I might just grab a couple more and just to hold on to it.
This is Bridgewater for a while. Strangely, smart guy, just from G's. He used to like,
He was at Aetna, then he was at Bridgewater.
I'll get it tomorrow before it sells in. Oh, I think it ends after July 4th, so after the weekend. I gotta buy some more TPT, not TPT, but Trade Day tomorrow too. I wanna milk them. Yeah, I'm still gonna trade. It's not bad, I just got greedy yesterday. Oh, yeah, I don't get that.
It's just where it's happening.
Okay, so Sunday it's closing, not Sunday, Friday is closing at 12 for us. So 1 a.m., 1 p.m. tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but Friday. Yeah. Good. I'm about to babysit. Wait, they're closing early Thursday too? Hold on. No. That's what Top Step, look, on the screenshot, on the chat.
People are going to get healthcare. So he's a great man. No one cares about him. But he knew how great this is.
Yeah, I said Friday, July 4th, early close. Why it's Thursday? I don't get it.
Is that socialism?
Oh, I'm aware you are one of the great capitalists.
I love capitalism.
Oh, you long?
Yeah, it's paper. That was my man, Dash.
I'm just waiting on a buy. I don't want to long yet. Yeah, Black's not gonna long anytime soon.
Here prior to the open, of course, on those delivery numbers that were better, I guess, or in line with estimates at the very least in terms of what they would deliver in the country.
Well, David, if they were down,
Man, Thursday close early is gonna suck.
Immediately shift to humanoid robots. See, because Tesla's funded.
Yeah, that's what Top Step is showing.
I've never seen Houdini security.
Yeah.
384,122 deliveries.
Let me check the actual CME website.
Almost all of them, Model 3 Y.
You want to talk about T-Wave, Elon?
No, I did know we hadn't heard from Musk at all. Yesterday we were talking about Elon Musk, the reignition of the future of the president, specifically over the bill we were just talking about, which of course didn't pass the Senate yesterday and is now in the House.
There's young, David.
But he's refrained from saying anything on social media, has Mr. Musk.
Well, that's good. I mean, he's making progress there.
Yeah.
Is that progress?
Well, look, I just
12:15 closes.
social media is a bit of a distraction. Now we know that it's America now.
980. Wait, how much is it now?
Keeps going up. What's that?
No way. Ouch. Even this pump is still down?
Takes it to a hold and says the quarter's going to be better. Now, this is the next quarter.
Ouch. That's toast.
People here. Yeah. And the quarter being better, pull through. And then we have the wand that could be waved at any minute on which of the, whether it be Perplexity, Claude, Anthropic is Claude. I mean, it could be. David, I know it's been painful, but I got a lot of errors last night. I'm from Philadelphia. You got a lot of what last night?
Yeah.
Errors.
Oh, your long is good, Chris.
Kate Winslet spent a lot of time learning that accent. Yes, in there, therapies. But I just find that we look at these. I've watched a lot of chat sites for different things, and they just made everything that was a press release sound like.
But yeah, tomorrow's an early day. Fuck. I gotta babysit there. I guess I'll just go take the kids out for pizza tomorrow. Yo, yeah, you want to send me some money, Gambit? I have 2 kids with me, so 12. Send me $34. Thanks. 2, but it's $12 each for the buffet. Oh no, we're not going to see. That's low class. We're going to this high end. It's called Mountain Mike. Pretty good.
This is the stuff that benefits from what I was talking about at the very beginning of the show, which is sort of this move, almost not the momentum trade, but the momentum trade kind of dying because it was not a
I
beneficiary.
poop like crazy when you eat CC. Must be like really bad ingredients.
There's a belief that Apple's going to violate its typical strategy.
Yeah.
Buying back stock and buying these or affiliated. Remember, I proposed before anyone else did.
Come on, bot. We're gonna go long. Nope.
And many followed your thinking there and said they should be hurts from
CrowdStrike.
they
Yeah.
haven't done it, just to be clear.
No, they haven't done
Not
it.
yet. Can't own yet.
Yeah,
Well,
they didn't like it when I said buy Netflix.
on the oscillator, the 15 minutes try to curve up, so maybe.
Have you noticed CrowdStrike?
I haven't.
What about up 43% for the year? And it's about to annualize the day that the glitch shut down America.
Oh wow, it's almost a year ago.
And then George did that 130 client visit in 100 days. Pretty amazing.
Jim, we were talking a bit about politics here. Paramount shares are up ever so slightly as it creeps closer to the potential close of the transaction.
They want a nicer
Oh,
library.
fish bot is
They want
on.
better.
Yes, they want the president to have a nice library. They have settled the dispute between the two. Many, of course, in the journalism
Yeah, I think
community
his bot is long.
have been rightly concerned here because it had to do with the way that a interview was
I
edited.
don't have data for YM on Ninja Trader. I didn't want to pay for it.
Candidate. Loser, of course, the vice president.
Yeah,
So
that's the truth.
what's that, the sole
And yet they
decision?
did settle. The board was there was a sort of a bid ask. It was led by, as many of these have been led by Boris Epstein in the White House. He was the one navigating the litigation, potential litigation against the law firms and getting those settlements. I mean, this guy has been very busy.
Very active.
He's been very active here. I think he had certain pieces of information in terms of political contributions that may have been made by people at CBS that he was trying to use, and that certain rules that they think were violated in terms of their policies. I don't know all the specifics. All I do know is we've been waiting for the deal to close here on Wall Street in terms of David Ellison's Skydance along with Redbird buying Paramount, as was agreed to quite some time ago. There will be a stub left outstanding, much of the stock.
I want a short, but I'm scared of short too.
So if you're the FCC has still got to weigh in. When I spoke to Brendan Carr at the Milk and
Okay, I want a short. There we go.
Order submitted.
Not related.
Order filled.
Those were his words, not connected, but they are doing their own review. Some of it had to do with, in fact, CBS and how they conducted themselves.
So remember,
We'll see what they finish that.
There has to be malice of forethought. That's the law under the Sullivan Doctrine.
Yes.
Is that why
Order
they
submitted.
paid? Was there malice of
It does
forethought?
appear that there was. And again, I've made the point many times, having done countless documentaries, for example, where you tape virtually all of your interviews, and you do make decisions about context and timing to try to present
Order canceled.
the purest form of what the person was trying to say.
So let's get away from politics. So the deal
Order
got closed, is
submitted.
what you're saying.
The deal is on track, most likely to close. You know, when that is, at this point, nobody would venture a guess, because I think all parties expected it would have closed some time ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And the more time that goes by, the more difficult it can become for the buying group, because you want to do a lot of things and you're sort of in a state where you can't.
I was going to ask you. I mean, the Oracle plan to build all these data centers and what these guys plan to do. I mean, maybe
there's going to be a linkage. They do talk very aggressively, to the extent they can talk about how much important technology is going to be in terms of the new Paramount, what they can do for direct to consumer and how they can improve that. But we'll have to wait and see. But again, it's a moment. The $16 million that they now, the board is now authorized.
Journalists and
a lot of people at CBS, as you might imagine, not happy.
The First Amendment. The First Amendment was never really that. You know, it's always an amendment. It wasn't.
We have
Order
a Constellation.
No, we haven't. And
Order
I think we
submitted.
should, because there's a lot of verbiage around why they missed the quarter, and it has to do with socioeconomic problems. Now, the reason why it's up is everyone in America knew they were going to miss the quarter. I mean, really, if you didn't think they were going to miss the quarter, you really were brain dead. But they do have issues involving Hispanics and the right to gather. And when they gather, there have been some people feel that ICE has targeted them. So
keep
there's not
dropping.
been much
Politics today, can we? Every road we go down, we end up there.
I mean, but look, the stock is up. They're still taking share. They kept their guidance, which is why it's up, right? But they did talk about the fact that this is an over-indexed Hispanic beer.
Yes,
and they were very forthcoming, talking about look.
Oh no, my short.
People are not getting together as much.
Yes,
in the Hispanic community as a result of concerns that ICE will come and.
Right. They also said heavy caloric jobs.
Oh wow, that's a bump. Bot might go along in a little bit. Not yet though.
It's quite a release. And it does kind of talk about the current zeitgeist.
It's interesting.
Order submitted.
They make the number because everyone knew it was going to be bad. And they do have big cash flow, and I think there's still people who believe that the beer market can grow. I don't. I think that cannabis, the desire to be look better and be better in the people in their 20s. And GOP, that's one, has effectively ended the growth of alcohol in this country, if not the world.
And by the way, we haven't even gotten to the point yet. We will potentially as soon as next year, where Eli Lilly is going to have a pill, as opposed to,
Yep.
and therefore you
And I'm in short on my eval.
GLP-1. The data
Order
is not
canceled.
significant in terms of weight loss, but that said, the
just
ease of use
MNQ.
and everything else.
People don't want to shoot
Order
themselves. People
submitted.
don't like that to refrigerate something and don't know whether it's going bad or not. And then the next iteration will be a drug that that targets just fat, not protein. And then, then I think that it's.
By the way, there are other
Dr. Topol
potential
would say
indications here. I know you. I mean, there's even some talk about dementia.
No, dementia's very on the table. Very much on the table. And Dr. Topol would tell you that he believes that.
By the way, when I say it, I mean actually acting against it. I'm not saying.
Oh no, no.
Just want to make sure people understand.
It's the same way that.
I think I'm gonna try to short on this Phidias challenge. And do 10 of them.
Did not market it correctly. So I mean, there's just a
There
lot
we
of
go.
drugs that are going to change people's lives, but they're not. But they're thought of as vanity drugs. The the end of alcoholism theoretically, if you wanted to, but their studies, that's a tough one. But it's a craving. Anything is craving, including chewing your nails, gambling, works against all those. It eliminates craving. And craving is, as we know, is something that can't eat one. It's a food.
Just find it frustrating when I go to dinner with friends now, and those who are on GLP-1s don't eat their meals.
They're not
You can't waste
They're
that.
not clean plate.
No, you can bring it home.
There we go.
You
Keep
want to
dropping.
eat it? Why go on?
Your business why did you order that from the Chinese?
Things are not cheap.
I went to Madison. I went to 11 Madison.
Yes.
I don't know if you're watching the Bear.
I
got in the kitchen. That is the New York kitchen.
Yeah.
And they do say chef. And they get very excited. They do say hands. And they do say behind. And it was amazing.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah, very much so.
All right, let's move from that to the bond report. Check out how treasuries are faring this morning. Chris, we did get that ADP number showing it was negative. Expected to be positive in terms of jobs. Right. There's a look at yields, though. Where do we got the 10-year? Yeah, not quite 4.291, and the 2-year at 3.77. We'll be right back.
But it's not gonna land it. So it's gonna wait.
ServiceNow platform connects every corner of your business, putting AI agents to work for people.
Like secret agents?
No, more like autonomous minions that you control.
Do what?
Well, Jim's agents.
15 minutes looks like it's gonna go up later.
My agents.
Wait, you all have
And this one a little dip.
And on the ServiceNow platform, everyone's agents work together, so everything works better.
And I have agents?
Maybe.
You got stopped out?
Why should you trade options rather than stocks? Because they offer higher returns, are cost effective, and can actually reduce risk. Learn how in our new book.
I got
Oh,
the
wow,
book and I
what a
read it in
drop.
a weekend. And it's just like, wow, on a measurable level, I'm being successful. I have a couple stocks, but I don't have many of them anymore. It's all options for me.
I highly recommend everyone gets John and Pete's book because there's nothing else out there like it.
Get a free copy today at itsnotanoption.com. Itsnotanoption.com.
CIDP is no walk in the park.
Yeah, I came back out.
The self-injection.
It's getting overbought soon in 3 minutes.
Still have CIDP. Chance to live big. Trulo has been proven to significantly reduce the risk of symptoms getting worse.
And I can treat my CIDP with a once-weekly injection in about 30 seconds.
Do not use Vyvgart Hytrulo if you're allergic to its ingredients. It may increase infection risk and cause serious allergic or infusion or injection-related reactions. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, fever, recent or planned vaccinations, allergy history, or kidney problems. The most common side effects include respiratory and urinary tract infections, headache, and injection site reactions.
I'm hitting the fairways with the belt.
I'm hitting the road with my number one.
Ask your neurologist about Vyvgart Hytrulo for self-injection.
Welcome to CNBC Plus. Where to?
CNBC Plus, on-the-go access to global market data, news, and analysis as it happens. Start streaming at cnbc.com/plus.
Take a look at the Nasdaq winners this morning so far in trading. You can see, of course, we've mentioned Tesla with deliveries in the U.S. that at least met or perhaps exceeded some people's expectations. Apple as well continues a recent run higher. And then you got MicroStrategy there, which has been MSTR. The strategy, right? It's all about Bitcoin. All right, we're back after this. We stop trading.
At Corient, wealth management begins and ends with you. We believe the more personal the solution, the more powerful the result. We treat your goals as our own. We never lose focus on the life you want to build. And our experienced advisors design custom-built strategies to help you get there. It's time for a wealth management experience as sophisticated as you are. It's time for Corient.
Today is a new age. Circle is building the foundation of our new economic system. We can raise global economic prosperity.
Life is always changing, and their Lovesack couch adapts to it all. Gathering around for game day one moment, reconfiguring for entertaining the next. And tomorrow, a new look entirely. Because Lovesack adapts to life, our life.
When you're actively trading, the fees really start to add up. Public is the only platform that offers rebates on your option trades, which help offset those costs. It's a simple way to help me keep more of what I earn.
700 is holding.
Overbanked about understanding what just happened in the markets that day and preparing for tomorrow. I'm looking to talk to sophisticated investors, beginning investors. I'm always learning.
Closing bell overtime, weekdays 4 Eastern, and streaming on CNBC Plus.
I've been nicotine for like about 10 years. What helped me actually get there was X program. It's free, it's backed by actual experts, and it doesn't ask you to be perfect. It's just support, like real support.
So 20 years until retirement. At this rate, it's probably going to be more like 40. Okay, no, way too long. Let's see how much you're spending. Download an app called Rocket. Oh, wow. I've got 3 DoorDash accounts.
Oh, wow. I think I'm short again.
You can cancel those right in the app. Rocket Money has a
I am
clear
short.
dashboard that shows you all your income and expenses,
Sell
helping you stay in
in.
control of your goals. It also shows you a list of all your subscriptions and how much you're paying all in one place. Is this the best budgeting app? Yes, and it's called Rocket Money.
Well, I'm showing that Phidias 10K challenge at 27. 727 is my short. There we go. I'm up 5K. Just got out. 111 NQ.
Stop trading. Remember old pal Joseph Schumpeter? Yes.
Okay, so we talked about DNA structure. Sure enough, the Rothschild and Redburn, I guess that's R&R, a firm they combined, calls Adobe being a victim of.
If I win this contest, will be funny as hell.
Just talking about multiple pieces deserve more contraction, and obviously this is downgraded from neutral to sell. And David, plus we have Figma coming public, and Figma is the poor man's Adobe. Adobe is a bit of a Porsche, and Figma's more of a Toyota.
Right, and the reason you bring it up is they had a deal to acquire Figma. It was a private company, obviously still is, but I assume may not be as it
No, I just
goes
did
public.
10
It was
for now.
stopped by the European regulators, wasn't it? If I recall?
exactly
I think it
right.
was.
That's that was.
Yeah, guys, go back even further because there was a time when Adobe was well over $300 billion
Adobe was the
company.
beginning of a great
Sunny and Orion.
It was fantastic.
I mean, that's all right. That's 10 years.
This is a great
Which still gives you a sense as to how far it came. But 5 years is probably going to look a lot different.
The designers, the high-end designers, the schools, the publishers, they still use it. It is an amazing and excellent product, but people regard it as expensive. Shantanu Narayan has actual AI, and people regard it as not as good as Meta for giving them $1 and seeing whether you can get in touch with the actual potential consumers. But this is amazing. It's a great American company, but this piece is.
What do you got on the big show tonight?
Okay, I'm trying to introduce more new companies that I typically would not put on the show, and I have the metals company. This is involving, this is the kind of thing that I'm doing now because people want speculation. They do electric vehicle battery metal from
Order filled.
Got out.
the ocean. They operate in the ocean. They are doing stuff that loses a lot of money, but people like That's the theme. There's a lot of
It's a
money.
great-
People like
it's a great tease.
You know, like uranium, like
speculative
fission
stuff in
power,
the ocean. And
yeah.
actually, I'm gonna watch tonight.
This is Vita BDS.
I'm gonna watch this.
Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Okay.
It's a great show. David Henderson.
Really?
Yeah, Richard Basehart.
Yeah.
Killer. Great music too.
Got it. All right, coming up, we're going to have more on Microsoft's layoffs. We'll get you back on those delivery numbers that we got from Tesla. Stay tuned. Big hour of Squawking the Street straight ahead.
Have you taken a tray yet? Damn it. What? This whole time I thought I was in Discord. Can you hear me?
It'll be here sooner than you think. I predict this stock.
Yeah, I thought I was in Discord the whole time.
Stock
Yeah, I got out of my shorts already. Did you take any play?
I spent 50 years on Wall Street, where I helped create an entire stock rating
Just short at 725.
I got my
Wait.
license in 1966 and I've invested through 9 recessions plus countless panics and bull markets. And I found there's one.
I mean, long is good later because 3 minutes is close to getting overbought.
Jim Cramer stock.
And then 15 minutes is looks like it's gonna curve up later.
I use this indicator
Just needs time.
2021 to convince folks not to sell when so many were panicking.
That's just me.
And again in March of 2022 to predict a crash. I used the same indicator to predict a new bull market in January of 2023, and again in 2024 when I told Business Insider the bull market would continue. And now I'm using the exact same indicator yet again to detail why there's a 90% chance the market will end the year up in 2025, backed by historical data, before crashing in 2026. Look, if you have money in the markets, you must know 2 critical things right now. First, what
Really want to hold it 700.
as the market continues higher, and second, exactly when the markets are likely to crash in 2026. I put together a free presentation that explains everything, including the exact month stocks are most likely to crash next year. You can watch my new presentation free of charge. To learn more, visit the website below.
Ever worry that you're drinking too much? Take back control with more
Order
help.
Bill.
More help
Come on,
provides
man.
access to
Flat.
medication proven to help. A daily pill to drink less, or to quit drinking altogether. Text CNBC to 710-710 to learn more. Never miss a moment.
Actual consumer spending, actual behavior, very solid to the end of April data that we reported. We don't see that changing.
They can pass any laws they want. What we have to figure out is what will be the impact of these
Order
policy
submitted.
changes. So I think in the future, crypto technology will power trading and all sorts of financial services, including trading in stocks and other TradFi assets.
Wednesday morning. Welcome to Squawk on the Street. I'm Sarah Eisen with David Faber and Wilfred Frost here. We are live at Post 9 of New York Stock Exchange. Carl has the morning off. Stocks are not doing a whole lot much if you look at the major indexes. The S&P 500, little change. NASDAQ is getting a boost. So there's strength in tech today with the NASDAQ up 1/4%. Dow Jones Industrial Average
Order
down
Bill.
70.
Bill.
Waiting for word of
Short
whether
again.
the big beautiful bill passes.
Order
Got the
Bill.
ADP private sector job
Order
report.
submitted.
Look at treasuries right now. And we are seeing kind of a mixed picture. The 2-year yield is lower, 3.77. A little bit
Order
higher
Bill.
odds of a rate cut for July. That's reflected in the 2-year. The rest of the curve a little bit firmer. Today, both Tesla and Rivian reporting
Order
delivery
submitted.
numbers. We've got a Rivian shareholder to talk about the news and where else he's seeing opportunity right now. Plus, dividend hikes and buyback boosts coming from the financials. But we have a top analyst who says there's one big name
I'll use
that's
restroom.
underappreciated in the sector. She'll reveal it coming up. That's the ADP job report. And remember yesterday I talked about some of the weakness that's happening in the job market. Well, put this report squarely in that category. Then we saw a negative number. It was actually a drop in private sector jobs, down 33,000 in June. Expectation was we would see a gain of almost 100,000. So that was a very big negative surprise. And here's a look at where the job losses were in the month of June. And I highlight it because it's a lot of the services sector, education and health. That was a big job creator over the last few months. Financial activities, professional services. It speaks, the fact that it's concentrated in services speaks to the underlying softness in the economy. It's not in manufacturing and goods, which would be more tariff driven, I think. It's in services. Now, one question is, does ADP correlate with NFP, the big jobs report that we're going to get tomorrow? It hasn't been a great correlation lately, but I think the trend usually
Oh shit, I'm short.
watching. The only other item I'd highlight, guys, in this report is that pay came
Gotta
down
cancel
for
my
both
order.
job
Keep shorting.
switchers and job stayers. It's still a healthy level, but it's coming down, so not an inflationary worry there as well.
It's still a small number overall, but yeah, the direction's going to be important to watch. And I go back to the point I said yesterday. As the data starts to turn, it almost hurts the chance of a rate cut if the president keeps making it so political.
I think that Powell really does just tune out the noise. I think it doesn't matter if he calls on him for a rate cut or not. If the data points them to a rate cut in July, they'll cut in July. If the data points to
You guys
September,
long?
they'll cut in September. At least if the data as interpreted by Fed
Are you
Chair
flat?
Powell and the rest of the
Okay, well, let me put it the other way.
Nice.
If he gets a rate cut, the president will claim credit and say, thank you, Mr. Powell, for your attention.
Stuck at 728 short now.
but it might be
Does Powell care? Does Powell care about the ADP number or not really?
Not-
And by the way,
not as
tomorrow's
much.
number, I mean,
more tomorrow's number,
Yeah.
for sure. Not as much, but I think that they have to look at a lot of different factors. You brought up immigration yesterday. So remember we got a strong job openings number, and we were saying, oh, that's kind of strange because the trend had been weaker for job openings. 3/4
Order filled
of the job openings came in accommodation, so leisure and hospitality. That could be an immigration story,
yes.
right? Where a lot of those workers have been deported,
Or,
right? And
or,
No, like the zone.
or simply stop working
Or come
for
stop
fear of being deported.
Right. So there's a story there that could be that we're starting to see that play out. It's again speculation. Nothing's been explained in that report, but that could be one explanation for why job openings looks better. I'll just highlight a few other things that Powell should be watching as he looks at the compilation of jobs data. So from the conference board, we get the consumer confidence data for June. We got it wasn't out today, but something that I went back and looked at that was interesting. 29% of consumers say jobs were plentiful, and that is a drop. I mean, we were trending above 30%. It's actually the lowest that it's been in a few years. So, yes, it's soft data, but if consumers are telling you that jobs are harder to come by, we see that, starting in the continuing claims data, we'll get a new update on that tomorrow, which is at a 3-year high of Americans that are filing for recurring jobless. So if you put it all together, and you've got a little bit of a recipe for a softening jobs market, again, the president would be very wise to point to that. Fed Chair Powell, get ahead of this. We're starting to see softness in the jobs market more than, hey, help us out with interest repayments on our debt. Because that's not something
And
that
the news, even the news is backing him up. We reported obviously this morning on Microsoft, again, as a percentage of its
Tesla might go
overall
red
employee
soon.
base, it's less than
That's
4%,
sad.
but nonetheless, 9,000 people are not going to have a job.
Yeah, it's only up
We
1%
just reviewed
now.
Microsoft following layoffs that they put in place earlier this year as well. Warner Music looking to save
Come on,
$3
baby.
million, also
Drop this
potentially
shit.
going to cut some jobs. I mean, this is happening. We'll start to, the headlines will start to be something we focus on as well, even though typically we don't focus on the hiring side when it comes
What
to
did
companies.
Doc made 60,000 on this videos?
Very quickly, you mentioned at the top. I think actually, I'll make this brief, David, to save you from it. Sarah and I will discuss it more in the next hour. But the UK 10 years up 20 bips today after
ES went long.
mayhem of 24 hours in
Let me
Parliament.
check the NQ bot. NQ might go long
Spending
soon.
cut that had been promised and what that does for future borrowing. Up to 4.6%. The only other thing I say, I really look forward to us discussing the banks. Kelsey agrees, but I've said this for years and obviously been wrong and too early. I can't believe how much they continue to focus on buybacks instead of dividends. In fact, Goldman increased its dividend by 33%. That was the biggest relative dividend increase versus buyback increase. All the others hardly touched the dividend. Focused on buybacks. These banks are at record highs, and they still focus on buybacks. And I just think that's really interesting. And we'll get into
What's
that.
happening in
later.
the UK? I mean, every time we see a spike in gilt yields, we worry about it, right? Because of the Liz Trust.
I think we have to go to the guest, and I can see David wanting us to go to the guest as well. So we
No, I love discussion of the UK.
But we're going to talk
Let's
about
talk
it
a lot more about
We're
it.
going to talk about it.
How big is that economy versus what's the
fifth biggest economy in the world, David?
Okay.
Not to be sniffed
fifth
at.
largest?
Yeah.
Fifth largest. Okay.
Did that surprise you?
Order
No,
bill.
I knew it was the fifth largest.
Well,
I think I
we
can name
can't
the top
all be
five.
the biggest.
No, we can't.
But
Smaller than the state of
not really,
California.
I'm not really fighting my corner very well there.
No.
But it just is what it is. Anyway, we are going to talk a bit more about that at about 11:30. But let's talk a bit more about the markets here. Oppenheimer Chief Investment Strategist John Stolfus joins us now. John, great to see you.
Really good to be here, Wilfred.
What do you think happens if the One Big Beautiful Bill passes? Do we get a 1% jump in the markets, a fall, buy the rumor, sell the fact? What do you expect?
I tell you, I think the market likely will have a modest gain if it does happen. But I think the reason why it will be modest is there will be another group of both traders and investors who will be concerned by the increase likely in the deficit. And I think that
Order filled.
Order
Order submitted.
would be what would
Order
be a
filled.
concern in the market. That said, at the end of the day, if when this thing finally gets fixed,
Order submitted.
if there's any changes, it'll have to go back and forth in Congress before we really see what it looks like. Ultimately, I think the biggest worry for the market are the tariffs and where we wind up, how long it takes to establish what levels, where they're going to be. And in the meantime, the market feels that it is already discounted enough in the decline that we saw from February 19th through April 8th of this year, discounted enough the concerns around tariffs, geopolitical risk in the budget.
Well, let's touch on that, because is it possible with markets where they are that President Trump decides to push the boundaries on the trade stuff next week again? Or either way, have we seen where the pain threshold is and the market kind of thinks if he does it and it doesn't work, he'll U-turn once again?
I think it's the latter. Indeed, I think the president is very sensitive in terms of to the market's response on the tariffs. He's very cognizant of what's going on with businesses' feelings about the tariffs, and I think that I don't think it's so much he chickens out. It's just that he responds to the reaction of the markets. I'm neither a defender of or an apologist for either the prior administration or this administration. But when you look at it, they all look at the market and they realize that
Order
more people
filled.
are invested today than ever before.
Order
Investing
submitted.
by the private
So
investors.
someone's up 144,000 already on that Phidias challenge.
Social Security is likely to be
That's over.
There's a
I
real
ain't playing.
need for private investors to invest today, like
Holy
institutions,
cow.
and it's intermediate, longer term. Better results if you stay in the market historically than if you try to time it.
I mean, part of your job in forecasting equities is looking at what the bond market is doing
Yes.
and how that relates to valuations. 10-year yields at 4.30 around. So a lot of people think that this might be the low because we have all these deficit concerns and potentially higher tariffs and maybe some inflationary risks. Where do you see that going?
Sarah, I've been for the last 12 months have been saying I think the 10-year really trades in a range. It trades in a range to be price to yield somewhere between 3.4 and
My short does
5%,
not look good.
depending upon where the data is coming.
That's a big range.
It's a huge range, exactly. That's what people have said for the full 12 months too.
Yeah.
But it's come to pass.
But that
That's
Phidias
where
one, I'm down $5 grand.
I think what it reflects now, though, at these levels, is more like normalization. The problem is, the free
Yeah,
money
I
era
don't like it.
we entered during the financial crisis it started 18 years
Give
ago.
us a drop
at the
so I can
end
long.
of 2007. So there's a whole generation that looks at a 4.23% on a 10-year yield and thinks that's a lot. I can remember, I've been in this business 42 years. I can remember showing fiduciaries of retirement plans in New York City.
Yeah,
10-year
I don't remember that last year, do you?
Treasuries that were priced to yield.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter because last year was July 4th was a Saturday, I
Hey
believe.
kid, forget about it. The Fed is going to
So
fail.
maybe.
Inflation is going to skyrocket. We'll see yields much higher. That never happened, by the way. They were wrong. I was right.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on
Lots of
my
good it can be.
pro.
But at the same time,
Make
what
a
I'm
little
trying to
more.
say is that I think we're really in a more normalizing
Order
era.
filled. Order
Other
submitted.
things that we think of, it's not the end of globalization. Globalization continues, just diversified further away from one country, global supply chain centricity.
Right.
You know, so we think things are actually getting better, even though there's always uncertainty.
Real quick, John, though, if we get a rate cut, maybe July, who knows, but does the market react positively to that, or do the concerns about a slowing economy overtake that?
I think the market has been looking for a rate cut sooner than later. I
Which
think if it comes
which
in
account you
time,
playing?
because we
My
get
funded
some
or something else?
real negative surprise tomorrow, then we'll probably get a bit of a haircut.
Oh, those are hard.
You know, a modest gain might be called for, and I think what Sarah was saying earlier.
So I was playing. I had 3 of them. I was playing M and Q, keep blowing it, and then finally just started doing NQ. Finally passed.
He's not letting the noise bother him. And I think he's doing the right thing. You know, there's a stickiness within inflation that still remains. We have not seen.
No. So if you pass eval, you go to the funded, and then once you get the funding, you do another. You make another 1,500. They'll pay out $1,000, and then you get $500 live account.
All right, let's take a look at our roadmap for the rest of the hour. Tesla shares rallying on the latest delivery numbers from the company. Although
Well, it's normal. It's just pass eval, then get funded, and then get your payout and go live.
Former Treasury Secretary Jack Lew speaking out on the New York mayoral race, calling Mamdani's policies
Yeah,
not
but not really. It's normal. Like most of the statics are like that. Even Apex.
Sees even more gains ahead for financials. Big show still ahead as the S&P 500 turns positive. We'll be right back.
Yeah. You see what Blue Sky is selling? Those fuckers selling a static with 2,500 drawdown was like almost $800. I mean, who's gonna pay for that? That's too much.
The great people the very next day. The plan was to hire 2 people, but the candidate quality was so good, I wound up hiring 4 in a week.
Zip intro. Post jobs today. Talk to qualified candidates tomorrow. Try it free only at ZipRecruiter.com/CNBC.
Investing. You buy low, sell high, jump on that trend, ride the wave. Stop. That's not how investing works. You're not a child playing a game. This is grown-up business. The real thing. You know, wealth isn't won in a bet. Luck is not a strategy, and success demands discipline. You're serious about investing.
I was hoping for a red day. Doesn't look like it. Well, 3 minutes is overbought now.
We're now in a story-dominated market. Even as the coverage is still all about the next quarter point for the Fed, I say that's for the institutions trying to beat the indices by 1% or 2.
Mad Money, weeknight 6 Eastern, and streaming on CNBC Plus.
Which American states are driving business, surviving, and thriving? America's top states for business is back. Which state will take the honors this year?
The list revealed July 10th and streaming on CNBC Plus.
What's your flavor? Tell me what's your flavor?
Here's a taste of H-E-B Cream Creations Mango Chamoy Sherbet. One of
Yeah, 25 minutes just YOLO.
Some nights call for the grandest of stages. Other nights for something more special. Because sometimes the best
Order
leads
submitted.
aren't in the house. Introducing the new 2025 Mitsubishi
Order filled.
with premium
Order filled.
concept,
Order
a
submitted.
world-class venue wherever your
Order
journey
filled.
takes you.
Look different. I played different.
Okay, 5 days. I'm still short. 752.
Welcome back. New delivery figures out of Tesla and Rivian this morning. Phil LeBeau has those numbers for us. Hey, Phil.
Hey, well, let's start first off with Tesla. The reason shares moving a little bit higher
Order
is because
submitted.
the delivery numbers for the second quarter not as bad as many analysts were fearing. For the quarter, the company delivered 384,122 vehicles. That is a little shy of estimates, but not as bad as some were predicting. There were some analysts saying, look, it'll be 355, maybe 360. Nonetheless, a decline of 13.5% compared to the second quarter.
Can you swing on this Phidias challenge? I just want to hold short forever.
Remember, they delivered about 1.89 million last year. First half of the year, 803 vehicles. Do the math here. They're going to need to come up with, about 1.15 million in order to increase over
Order
over
submitted.
what they did last year. A number of
Order
analysts think it'll be
submitted.
closer to 1.65 million. But there is also some good news out of China. The company reporting June sales were up a little under 1%. That is an improvement compared to 5 straight months where the sales were declining year over year in China. Does that mean that they have stabilized in China? We'll see. But for now, 1 month is better than seeing another monthly decline if you are a Tesla shareholder.
Damn,
Don't forget
that
that as the
sucks.
company moves forward in the next few weeks, we are likely to get the, I think it's going to be in the 3rd week, the Q2 results. And that will tell us just what kind of pressure the company is seeing on the bottom line. Shift gears now to Rivian. Deliveries in the second quarter coming in at 10,661 vehicles. That was,
Order
generally
canceled.
speaking, in line with
got some money.
expectations. They have also affirmed that their guidance for the year of delivering between 40 and 46,000 vehicles, that still holds. The Q2 production, it was down considerably, but that's a modest
Let me check on
changeover
the
that's
bot.
taking
It
place at the
will
plant
go
in
long,
Central
not yet, no.
Illinois. As a result, the company
It's close to going long.
production
It's
for
just
the quarter,
flashing the
just
thing
under
out.
6,000
It's
vehicles.
not yet.
That might be putting a little bit of pressure on shares of Rivian. They will be reporting their
Yeah.
Q2 results on August 5th. Guys, send it back to you.
Okay, Phil, I'll take it. Thank you, Philip. Let's continue the conversation. Our next guest has Rivian as one of his top picks in the EV space, of course, versus Tesla or perhaps the legacy automakers. Joining us at Post 9, ValueWorks founder Charles Lamanitas. Charles, nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
You are called ValueWorks, but I don't think of Rivian as a value stock. Why do you view it that way?
It's important to us to build a diversified portfolio of value stocks, but they're not all the classic value stocks. Rivian's a value stock because you're paying $14 billion for assets that today are worth more than $14 billion.
Okay,
Order
explain
submitted.
that to me. That's obviously the current market value of the company, roughly, maybe closer to $15 billion, but down a bit today. So yeah.
Look, they're selling 45,000 cars a year. They're going to be rolling out the new model next year that's going to be doing a couple of 100,000 cars. It's really, really easy to see how they get from a revenue base of $5 billion this year to $15, $20 billion 3 years down the road. And, from a multiple perspective on that, you're paying a big discount and a bigger discount than any other EV maker out there. And I think they're one of the long-term
Order
winners in the
submitted.
automotive space.
They do, yeah, but they have to consume
Order
a lot of
filled.
capital still. I mean, the
Order
amount of capital
submitted.
that these companies consume in their early going in terms of getting them started is enormous.
But they're basically
Order
done.
filled.
They basically consume that capital. Look, they have positive gross margins right now. They just took
Order
another $1 billion
submitted.
from Volkswagen yesterday. Volkswagen didn't put that money in there because they don't think this technology is the best going. And they've passed the hurdle of a startup phase business. You're selling 50,000 cars a year. That's not Lucid or Fisker or the other tertiary players. They're going to be one of the 2 standalone EV makers.
Yeah. Any concerns about the tax credit for people who would buy a Rivian going away?
Not nearly as much as you would have for other EV makers, and the reason is that the Rivians are $100,000 car, and people paying $100,000 per car aren't getting those tax credits anyway, because that tax credit phases out when you're at a certain income level.
It's interesting you mentioned the price there. I mean,
One is the
what about
ER
cheaper
is
makers? I know there's big
July
tariffs on the Chinese
21st.
makers, but even with a 100% tariff, you could save a lot of money and buy a Chinese EV. Globally, will Rivian do well or not?
I would focus on Rivian's opportunity in the U.S., and I would focus on the challenge
Market is
Chinese makers
boring
would
now.
have in entering the U.S. market. It's hard to get someone to park
Order
$40,000,
filled.
$50,000
Order
to buy a
filled.
car from a brand you don't know, from a
Order
Chinese maker
submitted.
that just
Order
opened a
submitted.
dealership up the road. You don't see any Chinese companies in the U.S. market right now, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, we don't want. We don't want.
Yeah, we don't want them here at all.
Well,
Yeah.
I had a question question about to electric planes, because you own Joby, and that's been like a monster stock in the last, I don't know, few months, year, up 100%. What's the timeline here for FAA certification?
So the electric vertical takeoff space
You
is
mean like get out of jail?
because these products have been being developed for 10, 15 years, and I think they're really close to being widely adopted.
Yeah, that's true. Money can get you anywhere.
They just started flying a plane in the Middle East right this week. And they were talking about, and look, they've been flying them and selling a couple to the government for a year and a half.
That's drop. There we go.
Probably about a year from now when they get FAA approval and Middle Eastern approval, and they're starting to ramp up production today. So that's like a fantasy sort of idea, but it's happening in the real world. And that's a place where, we bought it at a $3 billion valuation. We're basically paying a little bit more than the cash that was there.
How long was he in jail? 6 months now?
Long-term growth story. So, ValueWorks to us is trying to buy great growth stories at value prices, and we did it right in Joby.
So give me the metrics that have you back into an almost $8 billion market value right now in terms of that being a value based on the growth rate. For future growth potentially once they get the approvals they need.
It's really, really easy to get to a couple $100 million worth
Drop a
of
little bit for
sales,
me to get out.
when you're selling them for $5 billion an airplane. It's really, really different than when you're selling a $50,000 car. And you're going to have barriers to entry for the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. So they're going to have this market to themselves for 5 years.
Order submitted. Order filled.
I always think of that because the two came public at a similar time and they do the same thing roughly.
Yeah. So there may be two of them.
Order filled.
Joby is much further along by every objective metric in terms of having the number of crafts they built, how far they are along in the certification process. They're like a solid year and a half ahead of them. Archer has done a great job of creating public perception and building awareness of the idea of this business.
Still not high day yet.
To a degree, they've done a decent job of raising money for that. But when it comes to looking at the two of them, one of them has done a better job of getting the planes in production, or aircraft in production. And, I think Archer has been built with the stock market in mind, and I think Joby has been built with the prospect of actually having a business in mind.
Let's talk about some of your more traditional picks.
Order submitted.
Look, they're going to benefit from what's happening in the technology.
Still hasn't long yet. They're overbought now, so I don't want the bot to go long.
Leading edge products in terms of memory, and they're trading at very, very fair prices. It's not at 15 times earnings, and those earnings are ramping massively, and there's no business you'll ever find that has more leverage to the upside. So, from a valuation perspective, very, very compelling. From a growth perspective, it's extraordinary. The amount of memory that these systems are using is just intense. And it ain't going down anytime soon, and there are no new entrants into the space. And there are two major players, and they're one of them, and you're buying them at a very fair valuation.
Amazon fair valuation? I usually hear that name as a value play.
Yeah, okay, so a couple $1 trillion
Order submitted.
Gonna get some money on this Pro. Are you still flat, Gambit?
AWS business is worth $1 trillion. I would say their retail business is worth $1 trillion, and I would say their media and other stuff is worth another $750
Order
million.
submitted.
So $50 billion.
So it's a sum of the parts value play.
So pure sum of the parts value play. I don't think AWS is richly priced at $10 billion. I'm sorry, $1 trillion.
Order filled.
Some of the parts, great.
Order filled.
Holy shit, what was that?
Order submitted.
My shit. Oh my god. Of course my thing went short.
And then your performance numbers show it. I mean, you've trailed the S&P in the last 3 years. I think.
Yeah.
Why?
Now that thing's gonna hit high day.
Change has been difficult.
Ouch. Now my Pro is negative.
And our
Unless it drops.
25-year number is basically 2 times the S&P annually. So
it's a very small.
69.
$100 million.
It's getting some steam up for some reason.
Same asset base 10 years ago as it is today. Oops.
What's going wrong? Come on, man. You should be.
I don't know if you've noticed, but value has been out of favor for 15 years.
I have noticed. values, which is why I wonder, why do you want to be a value investor? Although you're coming up with some names, Joe B. and Rivian.
With 780, that's where it's supposed to go down to 782.
And if you look at our numbers a year ago, every metric was extraordinary in terms of trailing numbers. The past 12 months have been very, very tricky and choppy for value guys relative to growth. If you
Is that why?
If you take
Fucking
the
ass.
huge momentum names out of the indexes, we're even with the indexes. It's going to be even worse for value guys. I think.
3 minutes is the data for the oil. Oh my god, thank you. It's
I
going.
think the most likely scenario is we go into a bubbly, exuberant market top. And it's not value stocks that bring you up to that market top. Now, I think our portfolio has a chance to participate well in that sort of advance.
I kind of want to get out my
names that are really, what we think are really growth names that are priced as value stocks. And if they transition from value to growth, as Joby is in the process of doing it, we hope. And we've got a bunch of names in the portfolio like that. Amazon almost counts.
Yeah.
We think our approach to value could participate well into that top. And then when the air gets out of that bubble, we won't go down.
You'll be protected.
We won't go down 80%.
Although, maybe you want to change the name of the firm for this next year.
You know, we've stayed with it for 25 years. We'll probably stay with it for the next 15.
Charles, appreciate you taking time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Silicon 17 shares on pace for their worst day on record. What's driving those declines? That's coming up after the break. Plus, President Obama's former Treasury Secretary Jack Lew not mincing his words when it comes to the New York City mayoral race. What his views are there. Coming up on Sport on the Street.
Behind every click lies something irreplaceable. Your data, your thriving business, your promising future. Yet with
Order
each
filled.
technological innovation,
Order
come those
submitted.
determined to exploit
Order
it.
canceled.
That's why Cycurian's four-layered, first of its kind protection system doesn't just respond to threats. It
Order
predicts and
submitted.
protects. Today, security isn't just a feature; it's fundamental to everything you value. At Cycurian, we're committed
When you
to
go
providing
long.
an order filled of AI-enabled defense. Cycurian, securing what matters most.
Humana Medicare Advantage plans. Carry this card, and you could have the power to
Order
unlock benefits
filled.
beyond original Medicare. These are convenient plans that offer all of the benefits of original Medicare, plus
Order
extra
submitted.
coverage and benefits. With a Humana Medicare Advantage plan, you could get doctor, hospital,
have to
and
average
prescription
down,
drug
down
coverage
$80
in one
already.
convenient plan with $0 copays on hundreds of prescriptions.
Yeah.
Most plans include
That's the
dental
one with the
coverage,
payout earlier.
including
I was up 20.
copays
I'm
for
just going to try to
covered
get
preventive
$50.
services,
I'm
vision
caught.
coverage with eye exams, and an allowance for eyeglasses or contact
I'll
lenses.
go down.
Even hearing benefits with routine hearing exams and coverage toward hearing aids.
Order filled.
Because it's
More
way
than you
over
get
bought
with
on
original
3
Medicare.
minutes.
But it gets even better because Humana offers $0 or low monthly plan
But
premiums.
that 50 minutes actually pretty good because I knew it was going to go up. I'm just waiting for the dip.
Vaccines at in-network retail pharmacies, $0 copays for
Yeah.
telehealth visits, and $0 copays for in-network preventive services. Plus worldwide coverage for emergency and urgent care when you travel. And Medicare Advantage plans ensure your covered medical costs, including all doctor and emergency care, will never go above a maximum out-of-pocket amount that you know
Yeah.
beforehand. Imagine benefits like these in one convenient plan. Plus, you'll have access to Humana's multiple large plan networks of doctors, hospitals, and
Order
pharmacies.
filled.
Order filled.
If you
Order
want more for
submitted.
Medicare, call now
Yeah.
and see if there's a plan in your
Might
area
average
that
down
could
later.
give you extra coverage and benefits, including
Order
coverage
filled.
on
Order filled.
hospital and prescription drugs, plus a cap on your out-of-pocket
Yeah.
medical costs. And most plans include coverage for dental, vision, even hearing. A knowledgeable, licensed Humana sales agent will explain your coverage options, answer any questions you have, even help you enroll over the phone. Call today and we'll also send this
Order
free guide.
submitted.
Humana, a more human way to
Order
healthcare.
canceled. Order submitted.
Potentially pivotal June jobs report. What will the data indicate about the strength of the labor market? Implications for the economy and the Fed. Employment numbers and analysis.
Whoa.
30 Eastern and streaming on CNBC Plus.
S&P S&P pushing higher this morning. We are 30 minutes here into the hour. Here are three big movers we're watching. Jefferies upgrading Apple shares to hold from sell, arguing a tariff-driven pull forward of demand. And share
Order
recovery in
submitted.
China could boost results this quarter. Stocks up more than 2%. Centene shares plunging after the health insurer withdrew guidance and warned that earnings will fall short of expectations. It's hitting a number of other health insurers as well this morning. Take a look right across the screen.
Yeah, I think I have volume tomorrow.
Down 3%.
Order
Look at
submitted.
And Molina and Oscar also, because they're in the
Order
exchange business,
fills.
which is what Centene is getting hurt by, the Obama exchanges.
Yeah, tough to see the visibility at this point, down double digits. And then Microsoft announcing
Order
plans to lay off
canceled.
about 9,000 employees. That's around 4% of its global workforce. That said, shares are up more than 35%.
I need 4 more hundred and I'll be on my
April
buck run this other 25K.
All right, let's get to Constellation Brands. That's another mover today. And Brandon
Order
Gomez
submitted.
has the details for us after earnings. Brandon?
Hey, David. Yeah, Constellation Brands popping higher despite a
800, yeah. That's good
We knew
for
beer
me.
sales were going to come in light. What's new? CEO
That's what I did in the other
whether
accounts.
he intended to or not, admitted he's losing control to macro shock, saying in the release,
Yeah, bot's still
soft
short,
consumer
just
demand was
waiting.
largely driven by quote non-structural socioeconomic factors. Now, what does that mean? Well, we'll hear more on the earnings call starting in just a few minutes, but my understanding is he's hinting at the challenges facing Hispanic American consumers, which account for 50% of beer sales. Now, we're talking about Trump 2.0 immigration policy, which the company has said is reducing social gatherings, rising unemployment for Hispanics as well. The street starting to take note, JP Morgan, Bernstein, all highlighting a pullback in Hispanic consumer base, and one the company will have to speak to lest they fully hand the keys over to the Oval Office. Will.
Great stuff as always. Thanks so much for that. Constellation up nearly 2%. Time now for a CNBC news update. Christina Fontanellos has that for us. Hi, Christina.
I will, well, but the jury in Sean Combs' sex trafficking trial finding him guilty on 2 of 5 counts just moments ago in his New York trial. The panel found the music mogul guilty of engaging in the prostitution of former girlfriends Cassandra Ventura and a woman only known as Jane during the proceedings. They acquitted him, though, on the more serious charges of sex trafficking and racketeering related to allegations that he used his money and influence to manipulate his girlfriends into drug-fueled sex parties. Wisconsin's liberal Supreme Court overturned the state's nearly 176-year-old abortion ban today. The justices ruled 4-3 that the law was superseded by a newer state law that criminalizes abortions only after a fetus can survive outside the womb. The 1849 ban was in effect until the Supreme Court's landmark Roe v. Wade decision. Legislators argued it was reactivated when the court overturned Roe back in 2022.
Can't pre-launch that's gonna be
And
bearish.
researchers at Purdue
Let me check this
University are
thing.
launching a new expedition to find Amelia Earhart's plane. They will send a team in
Yeah,
November
because
to
his system
evidence, potentially showing the
showing
remains
is
of her plane in
100%
the
cash and
South
0%
Pacific,
spy.
about 1,000 from Fiji.
So I mean, it's supposed to be bearish
Order
today.
filled.
What the hell happened? No.
Sarah? Okay, Christina, thank
Order
you.
submitted.
Still.com, former Treasury Secretary
Oh, he has
Jack Smith's take on New York's contentious race
this
for
bot that he
mayor.
has in his
And also
Discord.
later this hour, big U.S. banks boosting dividends and buybacks after beating the Fed stress tests. What it means for
Yeah,
the group, which is
that's from
already
yesterday.
a nice outperformer on the year. We're back in a moment.
Afternoon. Let me see.
Order canceled.
Yeah, after closing, right back closing, he posted that.
With its customizable
And it's good sometimes. We'll see.
You can stay on top of the market from wherever you are. Trade from Morgan Stanley.
Yeah, because of that high, all-time high, I will never touch those.
Trading less complicated. Custom scans help you find new trading opportunities. While an earnings
Yeah.
tool helps you plan your trades and stay on top of the market, e-trade from Morgan Stanley.
Even TPT saying that tomorrow closes early.
That's as ridiculous as us being corporate types. Let's begin.
Rockstar move using Workday to handle all our AI agents.
Well, watch me handle my
Yeah,
agent.
I don't remember for
Bubbly
sure.
water, no bubbles. So what did you do this weekend?
Order submitted.
Come on, man, get drop this on me now. I'll take my $20 payout. I don't care anymore. 769.
Founded a home building company 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Now I'm launching a tech platform to drive innovation in home building and help families realize the dream of homeownership. By using open and closed source AI, we're
Working.
Order filled.
They should got family coming over.
Order submitted.
Still
let
pumping now.
artificial
Order
intelligence
canceled.
flourish. We can't let China leap ahead of us.
that would weaken our
Order
economy
submitted.
and threaten our national security. We must protect our competitive edge.
Do you make it through security so fast? The agents applaud.
If we hit 824, I might have to average down. If we hit 824. Yeah, just slow up.
It's travel. It's the competition. Except that it is. And you.
Order filled.
Damn.
Order filled. Order submitted.
Yeah. Oh, why we pumping? That's a bone too.
The biggest skincare secret? It shouldn't stop.
Order
at
canceled.
Get Dove Serum Body Wash.
I think I blew that Phidias 10K challenge. Let me check that. Yeah, I'm negative 10,000. It's blown.
Get active serums in your shower with Dove.
Yep, it's blown.
This is a meal.
Good thing it's free.
A good food that makes you feel good meal. You feeling that? Now meal this. A salad for the first time in a week meal. A catching up with your ex meal.
So, how's your mom?
In there. Ooh, a scoring full dash points meal.
What, last night?
Do I spy and I need 5 minutes to myself meal? Whatever you're feeling, at Panera, it just meals good.
That sucks.
Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. Zoran Mamdani has now
Yeah, they're
officially
young
faced a
too.
Democratic nomination for New York City mayor. Mamdani describes himself as a democratic socialist, and his win has caused some anxiety on Wall Street and within the Democratic Party. In the latest episode of my podcast, the Master Investor Podcast, I spoke with former Treasury Secretary Jack Lew, who of course served in the Obama administration, and I asked him whether
So when you
socialism
blow those, are you
for America-
cancel or auto cancel for you? Let me check that out.
Policies
I'm
that
gonna
he's
pay for
outlined are not policies that are good for New York. He's
the
running for mayor of New York,
Phidias
and I work
challenge.
deeply, having spent most of my life in New York, about a city that I call home. You know,
So much jail time. Probably already count because he spent like, yeah, because he spent like what, a year in jail, right?
policy solutions to the left and the right, and you know that satisfy populist sentiment, don't always go through the filter of do they work. I don't think they work, and I think that's a problem. One of the things I'll say about New York is that New York is not an entirely independent governing entity. Many of the policies have to be approved by the state, either legislature or governor. So it's a process where you have more centrist political voices that will still be very much in a position to determine whether or not different tax and spending policies can take effect. You know, I think the Democratic Party
Think he still got money though?
by building
Did
the
he?
center out, and that means appealing to the center left and the center right. I think going either extreme in either party tends to polarize the country.
Yeah,
So
he has a
that's
private
my
jet
own
too.
personal view, but I really can't speak to the party politics part of it.
And you can watch the full interview every week.
Oh, yeah,
Talk
that's
about the big
yeah.
beautiful bill, the deficit, the debt, the dollar, his advice for
Order submitted.
investors
Order
and,
filled.
policy
Order filled.
Order filled
Ooh,
leadership
got out.
on
Let's
the
go.
Master Investor Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And guys, I mean, you know Jack Lew better than me, Sarah, and David, you know New York as well as anyone.
Oh no, not that one. I didn't average
He's
down
always
yet.
measured in what he says, Jack Lew, and he didn't get
I think I
directly
need
involved in
1,000 more
politics,
for a
but
payout
I
with
was
this
struck
one.
by how explicit
And
he
there's
was
TTT
about the
straight
policies
to
that we're
funding.
clearly talking about to criticize them so overtly.
Well,
as he did that.
he did not do what Bill
That's
Clinton
TTT.
did, which was congratulate
No,
everyone on
Tick Tick Trader.
I mean, Jack Lew is kind of a poster child for
Market won't
the
die.
liberal administrations in recent history. He was in the
Yeah,
Clinton
I have a
administration,
average down
Obama,
to
several
825.
Order submitted.
OMB director, Treasury Secretary, and then Biden's U.S. ambassador to Israel. He is very representative of all those administrations, and the fact that he is distancing and saying this would be bad for New
Order
York, and
filled.
he shows you
Order
how
submitted.
different and the sort of soul searching
Order
going on in
submitted.
the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah, there's
We
a
heard it from Peter Orszag as well.
We did
who
last week.
really
I thought,
denounced
where
the
his
anti-Semitism.
comments were
Order filled.
quite significant in terms of what he was
Order
talking about
submitted.
the Democratic Party being potentially anti-Semitic and anti-capitalist. Those were his
Order
words.
filled.
Um,
Order filled.
Eric Adams is, obviously still in the race, and there's a lot yet to go, and we'll see if he can garner the necessary turnout, really, that would reflect, I think, more on what Lou is talking about in terms of the
Order submitted.
moderate bent of most of New Yorkers.
Holiday market hasn't changed.
You know how large the budget of the city of New York is? Sarah?
110 billion?
115 billion. You know how large the
Order
state of
filled.
Florida's budget is?
Much smaller.
115 billion.
Oh, really?
Same. 22 million people. We got 8 million.
Order
Percentage
canceled.
goes on police.
Police is not as large as you'd think.
Really?
The largest is benefits and pensions. So healthcare is about 10 billion, and then other fringe benefits, and then pensions. That's together equates for about 25 billion of the 115 billion. I think education is the number one other line item, and then you move down from there. But these are things that the next mayor is going to have to deal with. How do you maximize
On what, YN?
Yeah, as opposed to antagonizing the people who are paying the taxes.
Okay, so on the 3 minutes on NQ, it's going to curve down maybe another 15 minutes.
Details to follow. We'll bring you those details as we get them and keep you posted on the
So
story
I might be
as
safe.
it develops. But here we are in the, self-imposed deadline next week, July 9th, for when we're supposed to see these trade deals materialize.
That'd be good for Nike, would it?
Order submitted.
They move production now or
For
not?
sure. No, that's huge. It's
Yeah.
for Nike and for all of retail that we're very
I think I might pull back a little bit and then run up again. At least on the 15 minutes it's showing now.
Is that just going to be the new cost of doing business there?
Really interesting. We're going to get more on that as and when we get it after a short break. We're also going to talk about the banks who've announced their latest capital return plans. We'll have more on them next.
Is this how you're hoping to retire? Well, hope isn't a good retirement strategy. You've worked for a comfortable retirement for years. Now you need to plan for retirement income. Learn ways to avoid common mistakes, like being too conservative or not setting retirement goals. Have someone on your side to keep you on track. Call for Fisher's Comfortable Retirement Kit with the help you need to make your retirement a success, including the Investor's Guide to a Comfortable Retirement.
Funeral.
13 retirement blunders to avoid and maximize your Social Security.
Funeral.
1-800-759-4477.
Yeah.
Fisher tailors a plan to keep you on track for a retirement you want. And as a fiduciary, we do better when our clients do better. Call now for your Comfortable Retirement Kit. Call 1-800-759-4477. Call us today. You don't have it coming to you unless you plan for it. If your portfolio is $1 million or more, call 1-800-759-4477.
48%
Right.
of
Kagan says he's still facing
Order
20 years.
canceled.
Look at that drop.
recommend Qdols magnesium glycine.
Yeah.
It's
Get
formulated
me
for
out.
absorption.
Come on, a little bit more.
Qdol, the brand I trust.
Order canceled.
What was that?
Order submitted.
Microchip powerhouse to market. Mizzou
Not yet, no, it didn't hit 69.
Tech company needs a corporate and investment bank. We're there.
Come on, you little shit. Go down.
Which American states are driving business?
No, I didn't. It never hit 825.
The ultimate competition. America's top states for business is back.
What was the news?
Tackling tariffs, budget cuts, finding local strength in a time of national economic uncertainty. Last year, Virginia took the honors. Which state will be the top state for business this year?
These old bots. Come on, drop a little more. I'm gonna get out.
There's so much focus on the big banks these days, and for good reason. But there's a smaller financial services
I still hasn't long yet too.
and because it's being 300% just in the last 12 months. But some notable insider buying could be at play as well. Tune into our Market
Yeah.
Navigator segment later on
That
today
might
on
rug
Capital
pull like
Launch.
yesterday.
We'll find out why it's a top pick for one CIO, 2 p.m. Eastern Time.
Not all multi-millionaires build their wealth.
Oh, that's like a 40-point drop.
The fearless investor.
I don't see anything on the news.
The boot maker.
Oil? No, I don't see anything. It's coming back up.
Thanks to our award-winning service, low costs, and transparent advice. Every day, over 1 million multimillionaires trust Schwab with $3 trillion of their wealth.
And it came right back up. I should have got out, yeah. Oh well. I still believe it's gonna drop. That's why I don't want to get out.
Those who never give a second thought to being the first ones in. Thank you. ServPro, proud supporter of our nation's first responders.
Welcome back to Talk on the Street. Well, America's biggest banks are on a winning streak. Wells, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, and
Yeah, that sucks.
are just inches from hitting their new all-time highs after passing the Fed's latest stress tests late last week and boosting shareholder payouts yesterday after the close. Those are how far they are from all-time highs as we stand, but they're having a decent couple of trading sessions. So, what's on the deck for banks in the second half of the year? UBS Managing Director and Large Cap Banks Analyst Erica Najarian joins us now with her take. Erica, my first big question.
Oh, Kagan said that Diddy's facing 20 years of jail.
Focused on buybacks over dividends at these valuations?
So actually, we did get much incremental buyback announcements yesterday. What we actually saw was a 13% dividend increase for all the G-SIBs yesterday. And I think what the banks are going to do is they're gonna wait and see.
And it went higher. A new higher day. What the
New
hell?
authorization of $50 billion at JP Morgan. The re-up authorization at Morgan Stanley is just that, right? Re-up authorization.
Yeah.
I think particularly at these valuation levels, with the exception of Citi, I think the banks are going to think hard about how they deploy that excess
Taking
capital.
the profit
And I think
and
the
just
lion's share of them are going to deploy
take
it
a little
back into
L.
business.
So, Erica, what do you think is the opportunity now? We've seen the banks run up so much. How much of this sort of good news, whether it's on cash return that you're talking about, deregulation, I mean, there's a lot of bullish narratives on the banks is already factored in.
Yeah, but think about it this way, right? We had sort of a U-shaped performance as we had the sort of anticipation animal spirits after the election and deregulation, and then we had Liberation Day, and we sort of put worse economic outcomes on the table, and the banks have bounced back since then.
Order
And I think
submitted.
all of that recovery is really, taking away some of that downside risk in terms of economic outcomes from the tariff policy. I think there's a little
Yeah, I'd
bit
put it
of
in.
for two reasons. Number one,
If it hits, it hits.
activity
But it's gonna
levels
drop.
are back. If you look at week-to-week increases in investment
Well, onto my internet.
banking, obviously nothing got done in the month of April and the first half of May, but we really had to pick up in activity levels in June. And then you have loan growth potentially coming back in the second half of the year.
Order
So
submitted.
you could actually
Order
have
filled. Order
EPS
submitted.
revision cycle coming. And we think that deregulation could be very positive for ROEs. So if you lower ROEs, or rather, if you lower capital standards by 50 basis points, Sarah, you could see a boost to ROEs by 140 basis points. And guess what?
Order submitted.
After the stress test, we saw capital requirements
Taking
down
1 day,
90
today's
basis
day
points on
2.
average.
I need 6 more days.
Have both
And
the
request Apex.
denominator helping, not just the numerator helping.
Goldman and Morgan Stanley, though, you think are fully valued?
Look, that's actually the biggest conundrum in my universe, because they're by far the best suited and the best positioned for all of this deregulation.
Order filled.
Whether it's on the
Order
leverage
filled.
ratio, on the G-SIB, but they're also at all-time
Yeah.
highs.
Order submitted.
I think I would sort of steer the viewers
Order
towards
submitted.
looking at something a little bit more underrated, like a Bank of America.
There's
Order
Vietnam
filled.
news there. That's my average down now.
Order canceled.
So fuck if it doesn't drop.
From the dereg.
So now I
They
need
could actually
$7.97.
into the investment banking business, the trading
Order
business,
submitted.
and they have a valuation where they could be aggressive as well in terms of buying back stock.
Okay, Erica, we'll leave it there for now with their pick there on Bank of America. Erica Najarian, thank you for weighing in. We're getting more details here on
pumping
the
this
trade
Vietnam
deal
crap.
that the president just announced with Vietnam. Amy Jaffers joins us from the it's new tariff rates.
Yes,
Sarah, that's right. This is the first trade deal that we've seen since that deal with the UK, and the president putting out some more details here on social media just in the past couple of minutes. He says the terms are that Vietnam will pay a 20% tariff on any and all goods sent to the U.S. and a 40% tariff on transshipping. That's important because there's been a lot of concern about people trying to do an end run on tariffs of goods that are manufactured in China, then sent through Vietnam, and then out into the rest of the global economy. That seems to be an effort to put a stop to that. He's also saying here that the Vietnamese government will give the United States total access to markets for trade. In other words, the president says here they will open their market to the United States, meaning that we will be able to sell our product into Vietnam at zero tariff. The president going on to say here, it's my opinion that the SUV, or as it's sometimes referred to, large engine vehicle, which
Next level is going to be 869. But,
to the various product lines with Vietnam. So we're looking for a little bit more color here from the White House on exactly when this was signed, sort of what the negotiations were leading up to it. But clearly, the White House
had an average downwind at 150K.
this morning, given that all eyes are focused on that July 9th date for trade.
Orders submitted.
1100, 1200.
The White House now saying they've got a trade deal, and it's a big one with Vietnam, guys. Back over to you.
So the 20%.
There you go. Come on, baby.
Says Vietnam pays the 20% tariff, but is that to any imports into the U.S.? So Nike pays it, all the different retailers pay it for their production.
So the way the president talks about tariffs is he talks about other countries paying the tariff, but in reality, what tariffs are is a tax on importers in the United States. So I believe what he's referring to there is a 20% tariff on Vietnam that would be paid by U.S. importers at the point where the goods cross the border, right? So U.S. Customs would be collecting taxes from American importers of Vietnamese goods. The president talks about
yesterday was bad, today is stupid.
The foreign government, the foreign country. In reality, those tariffs are paid by American
Gonna get a new high day coming up.
and they have to, then those importers have to sort out with their suppliers and with others and with their customers where the burden of that tariff is going to fall.
Eamon, July 9th is, a week away. Is this kind of expected, this particular announcement? Are we expecting more like this over the next week?
Order
Of course,
submitted.
it comes just after some less constructive comments
Order
about
canceled.
Yeah, I mean, the White House has been predicting a flurry of trade deals before that July 9th deadline, but we haven't seen any, right? And so this is the first time we've seen one, come above the surface, so to speak. And the question is, are there others behind this that are lined up and ready to go? That would be a vindication for the president's tariff strategy here, that rattling the global cage back in April with the so-called Liberation Day tariffs was an effective way to get countries to the table and get them to negotiate trade deals that are on more favorable terms.
No,
for the
this
United
one
States.
is TTT on way down. It's like
Clearly
in
gonna point to
Q.
this today as a big victory and say, look, we're doing exactly what we said we were going to do.
I mean, it's kind of
Orders
it's kind of
submitted.
steep terms for Vietnam. Not as good of a deal for them. If we pay, we go in there with zero tariffs. But it's very interesting. Thank you, Eamon.
Yeah, I just want to say one more quick detail from our Megan.
797. So yeah, about.
Average tariff on imports before this was 9.4%.
Order filled.
Order filled.
Come on, baby.
That's a big step up, right?
I know. Are you trading anything or no?
Not as much as we take from them, clearly. But what's interesting, David, is that the market is not reacting, really.
I'm in a tray. I can't hear you.
That rely a lot on
Come on, drop it. Get me out. I think so. Yo, look at my Apex. I'll show you my Apex. Close to payout again.
So I'm just looking at some of the retailers. They do, remain higher.
6 more days. I need to get to 7,500. So I need 3 more hundred. Take it slow. Get another $5 payout.
Forget about the cost of insurance amidst what some are calling a national crisis for that industry. Scott Cohn joins us with that story. He is in one city that is seeing a spike in costs, of course, Pacific Palisades in Southern California. Scott.
Yeah, that's right, David. And the experts are saying, by the way, that tariffs will factor into all of this because they
Yeah, we bought a dip later when I get out my short.
construction materials, and that's part of what we're dealing with. Pacific Palisades, of course, was the site of that horrific fire in
You
January.
should have short at
12 people
8:25,
died,
like you
6,800
said you
structures
would.
destroyed. In Altadena, another 18
Oh,
people
okay.
died, and 9,000 structures destroyed. They are rebuilding.
$25?
though, as you can
That's good for
see,
payout.
to some degree, but not without some incredible cost. And beyond the fire zone,
Come on, a little bit more.
the online insurance marketplace Insurify is talking about homeowners insurance rising in California 21% this year, can be even higher in fire-prone areas. California premiums, by the way, are not the highest in the nation. In fact, they are not even close. That belongs to Florida, of course, followed by Louisiana, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Texas. And those numbers that you look at really change what it means to own a home.
If I get out, I will not touch again. I just take my little small payout, take the kids out for pizza tomorrow. No, I need $7.97.
Essentially cost caps long-term bet, especially if
No.
you live in a state like Florida.
No, I'm still negative $8. I'm gonna hold. I want to make some money. Because it looks like it's going to drop. You look at the 3-minute oscillator, it's going to curve down in a little bit. Just need some more time, I think.
Into our cost of living category, you can read about our study, and you'll see where all the states rank up, including yours, next week.
Yeah, let it dip a little bit.
CNBC.com. Guys?
All right, can't wait for the big reveal. Thank you, Scott Hone. Coming up next hour on Money Movers, the CEO of HPE will join us after closing its acquisition of Juniper Networks. Stock's been on a nice run over the last 3 months of trading. We're also going to talk to the Agriculture Secretary about this new Vietnam trade deal, the big beautiful bill, and more. Money Movers begins after a quick break.
See the faces when they go out.
Seems to be a problem, so
Come on, I'm going back up.
Barely, sir. It's for the Greeks. Innovation changes everything.
Send it back!
Oh, I
With
do
one
have
investment,
Apex
you
in
can access the
trading.
best of 100 innovators who are rethinking the world. Before investing carefully, you need to consider fund investment objectives, risks, charges, expenses, and more. Prospectus at invesco.com.
I like things personalized, like my coffee. So when my doctor prescribed Vyvgart Hytrulo self-injection
Orders
for my
submitted.
generalized myasthenia gravis, we personalized my treatment goals. Vyvgart Hytrulo can improve daily abilities and reduce muscle weakness.
It's my treatment, my way.
Vyvgart Hytrulo for weekend away ski.
It's travel ready and can go where I go.
Self-injection fits my plans.
Do not use Vyvgart Hytrulo if you're allergic to its ingredients. It may increase infection risk and cause serious allergic or infusion or injection-related reactions. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, fever, recent or planned vaccinations, allergy history, or kidney problems. Most common side effects include respiratory and urinary tract infections, headache, and injection site reactions.
My Vyvgart
Get
Hytrulo
me out of here.
Reducing my
I'm
symptoms.
gonna get out.
Treatment? My way. Your neurologist about Vyvgart Hytrulo.
Rather than get rich quick, I believe in get rich slow. The high yield cash account.
I think she
looked
gonna
like
go
it
down.
actually had higher rates than anything else I was able to find online. I don't want to be losing sleep over having made risky investments.
Yeah,
I
but
needed
it's still a lot though.
stable that could really give me long-term financial benefits. I know my money's working hard for me, and I know I can access it anytime I need it.
We ran a promotion cutting the price of Mint Unlimited, and it was so popular.
Damn it,
doing
come
it
on.
Like a sequel that's actually as good as the original.
Oh. And then it popped.
Okay, it's exactly the same.
Today is a new age.
Circle is building the foundation of our new economic system. We can raise global economic prosperity.
I'm checking the markets throughout the trading session, working the phones, talking to sources to share insights, information, and all of the details that you need to make money.
Closing bell overtime for Easter and streaming
Wow.
on CNBC
Came right back up. I should just die. Gonna give out 14,000 giveaway if they get 250 more subs. Oh shit. So I'm up $2. I'm gonna hold. I'm gonna sell shit.
Expectations for the president's mega bill making its way through Congress.
Not anymore. If it goes down under 817, I should be green. Yeah, I'm green. I'm gonna hold.
Explore the world the Viking way. From the quiet comfort of elegant small ships with no children and no casinos. We actually reinvented ocean voyages, designing all-inclusive experiences for the thinking person. Viking, voted world's best by both Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast Traveler. Learn more at viking.com.
Is this your dream of retirement? How about this week deal? I like fishing. Or is this a little more your style? Retiring well isn't a guarantee, it's a goal. It's easy when markets are going up. But what about when they're not? That's why you need this.
Call for Fisher's Retirement Survival Kit, featuring your guide to surviving market volatility, our stock market outlook, plus the Fisher Investments Difference. 3 indispensable guides. Yours free. 1-800-213-5317. Fisher Investments' disciplined approach will help see you through the market's ups and downs and give you the confidence you need to reach a comfortable retirement. And our fees are structured so we do better when our clients do better. Call now for your free retirement survival kit. 1-800-213-5317. See if your dream retirement is on track. If your portfolio is $1 million or more, call Fisher today. Call 1-800-213-5317.
Food is sensual. Food is beautiful. Act 3 invests in and helps
Come
build
on.
restaurant and entertainment companies. Ambition is about making a difference in the lives of other people. What do we need to do today to create the future that we hope for?
Wow.
Welcome to CNBC Plus, market destination.
CNBC Plus, on-the-go access to global market data, news, and analysis as it happens. Start streaming at cnbc.com/plus.
Putting nicotine with support makes all the difference. Outsmart nicotine every step of the way with X program.
The Rooms to Go July 4th sale ends Monday. Hurry in to save big on the furniture you want. Shop incredible hot buys and get great value. With living rooms on sale, bedrooms on sale, and dining rooms on sale. And it's about to get even better with 55-month interest-free
I still think
financing.
it's gonna go
That's right.
down.
At Rooms to Go, you get both amazing sale prices and interest-free financing for 55 months. Don't wait.
I'm gonna
The
reach short
Rooms
it
to Go
goes up more
July
on the
4th
other
sale
account.
ends Monday. Jim Gaffigan, Alana Glazer, Roy Wood Jr., Krista Stefano.
Gotta make sure I cancel all my orders when I leave.
You know it's not a good joke when you have to explain it.
Welcome back.
There we
HPE
go.
officially closing its $14 billion
Oh no,
acquisition of
so they're staying with my my wife's dad's house. So he's watching the kids. When he goes to work, I have to go pick them up and bring them there. But she works, yeah, she works in the morning, and the husband went back to the Air Force Base in Abilene.